Clearly, we're good to start now, or do we need to wait a minute for it to go through? Usually,
We can start.
Okay. Good evening and welcome to the February 25th, 2025 Parks and Recreation Commission meeting. I'd like to call it to order and start off with a roll call, please.
Commissioner Krebs?
Yes.
Here. Commissioner Dang? Here. Commissioner Kleinhaus? Yes. Commissioner Wei?
Here by Zoom.
Vice Chair Greenfield?
Yes, here.
And for the record, Commissioner Brown and Chair Freeman are both absent.
Thank you. So now is the opportunity for public comment for anyone who would like to speak to an item that's not on the agenda this evening, either in person or via Zoom. If you're in person, have a card fill out and give it to the clerk, or raise your hand via Zoom.
So we have 3 public comments. We have 2 in person and 1 via Zoom.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Our first public comment is Orit.
Thank you. Dear members of the Commission, thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening about the recent survey to share feedback on adding a restroom at Eleanor Party Park. I appreciate your effort to put together a survey to collect information. However, I find the survey to be biased and poorly designed. The main question in the survey is a leading question, pushing responders to provide a specific answer. It is not balanced, and it is not, and it does not offer any information about potential problems. The question requires the survey responders to agree or disagree with the following statement. Adding a public restroom would make the park more accessible for families, individuals with disabilities, and elderly individuals. A public restroom would enhance the overall park experience for visitors and help encourage longer visits to the park. The survey then provides an option to include any concerns in an open field. Moreover, the survey tracking mechanism is lacking. Any person may respond to multiple times. The link to the survey may be sent to any individual anywhere in the world, not only to Palo Altans. The survey is not sampling for park goers and actual frequent users of the park, or for immediate park neighbors. These 2 groups that will likely be affected mostly by the results of the survey. As mentioned, the survey is not balanced, and it should also include some concerns. For example, concern over increased traffic in the area around the park, which affects safe routes to schools, including Green Middle School and Pali. In addition, increased noise and smoke from the picnic areas, access to individuals who may be compromising safety of children, as well as increased costs. Before making a decision to invest in a restroom at Party Park, I would like to ask you that you consider putting together a well-designed survey that provides an opportunity for a fair, authentic, and thoughtful perspective. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Chris C.
Excellent. I have a last name too. My name is Chris Cummings. So thank you for having this forum. And I'm here to talk about the potential of a restroom at Eleanor Party Park as well. I just wanted to say that I love the park. I border on the park. The park is my backyard, and nothing is better than a full and used park, whether that's AYSO games on the weekends and upcoming in the fall. We have quite a contractor population that's there every evening after work to play soccer, and this is great. That's what parks are for. So I'm all about using the park, but when I think about the potential of a restroom, I do have concerns. One of the concerns is that this is not a regional park like Greer or like Rinconada. It's just a little community park. And I share the same sentiment that Ari expressed about the survey. I really like the survey to reflect those that are immediate to the community and have some say over that as opposed to just anybody. I recognize that it's part of the mandate of the Parks and Rec Commission has taken on to say we should have restrooms in every park. I also believe that we should have some say over that. I would like to understand what the traffic implications will be, because to me, when I think about a community park with a restroom, that becomes a stay all day park. And for me, I would love to see evidence that and be overwhelmed by it, which is that there's evidence that we can care for these restrooms the way that we care for the park. The park is well cared for. I pick up trash in that park every day, but it's incidental trash. That's just stuff that happens. Kids are there and this happens. However, and I didn't submit my photos 24 hours in advance, but I'll be sure to get them to you if I can get the right email address. I would like to give you some evidence of what's going on at restrooms at other parks, in particular, a regional park, which is Rinconada, where, I would show it on my phone, but you can't see it. But it's basically just been in a state of disrepair for now 3 months. And I just don't understand why that is the case. And then yet we're expected to say, hey, every new park is going to be, the restrooms are not going to be in that condition. So I'd love to just understand what we should expect in terms of a service level agreement from our Parks Commission about how these restrooms will be maintained and how they'll be cared for. I'm not a complete NIMBY. However, I have been here 20 years ago when we had this same discussion about restrooms in the parks. If this is a mandate, I understand, but I would really like to see some concrete evidence that we won't experience the same problems that I see down the street at Rinconada. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, on Zoom, we have Dashiell L.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Dashiell Leeds. I'm the Conservation Coordinator for the Sierra Club Loma Prieta chapter. My comment is regarding the Emily Renzel Pond's vegetation management practices. It appears that staff has slashed and hedged all of the vegetation around the ponds. This removes habitat that is important for biodiversity. If this vegetation management is necessary, we recommend that staff use a phased approach to manage these areas so that not all areas are managed at the same time. This will create habitat diversity by alternating the mowed or hedged areas, by doing some one year and some the next year, so that wildlife will have habitat to forage, nest, and find shelter. Thanks for your time and consideration.
That concludes public comment.
Thank you. And thank you for the members of the public who took the time to speak to us today. I appreciate it. Next is agenda changes, additions, and deletions. Do any commission members have any comments regarding that? If not, we will move on to our first to agenda item 1, which is the approval of minutes. We have a double feature this evening. We have approval of the December 18th, 2024, and last month's January 28th meeting minutes. Well, let's start with the December 18th minutes. Do any commissioners have any comments regarding these minutes?
I do, just one. On
Please do.
page 5, line 132, I believe it should be PAUSD rather than PASD. And that's it for me.
Safe bet. Thank you.
Thank you.
And any other comments? If not, can I get a motion to approve the minutes, please?
I'll make that a motion to approve.
Thank you. And do we have a second? Commissioner Kleinhaus.
No second.
Thank you. Okay, and let's have a roll call vote. This is to approve the December 18th, 24 PRC minutes.
Commissioner Krebs,
Yes.
Commissioner Deng,
Yes.
Commissioner Kleinhaus,
Yes.
Commissioner Way,
Yes.
Vice Chair Greenfield.
Yes, thank you. Now we'll move on to the January 28th minutes. Any comments from commissioners regarding the minutes? Barring any comments, do we have a motion to approve the minutes? Please.
Sure.
Thank you, Commissioner Kleinhaus, and a second.
I will second.
Thank you, Commissioner Krebs. And can we get another roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Krebs, Commissioner Deng,
Yes.
Commissioner Kleinhaus,
Yes.
Commissioner Way,
Yes.
Vice Chair Greenfield.
Yes. All right, so both motions have carried. And now we're ready to move on to the city reports.
Great. Thank you, Steve Castile, Assistant Director of Community Services. Why don't we go ahead and pull up the slides? And with that, Sarah, why don't you take it away?
Good evening, Commissioners. We wanted to report out at one of the city's first completed special event that was very successful. It was Heart in Harmony Valentine's Day Dance for everyone. And there was 175 pre-registered and 120 people attended. It's a really successful first event, lots of dancing, families, seniors, and a place for everyone. And we're looking forward to the next. Next slide. Some of our upcoming special events include Around the World in a Day cultural festival. So please save the date for March 29th at Lucy Stern, 10 to 1. We have an Earth Day event that is not featured in the slide here, but verbally just want to say April 27th, Saturday. It's happening at the Art Center from 1 to 4. And then May Fete parade on University Avenue and ending at Heritage Park on Saturday, May 3rd from 10 to 1. Next slide. Spring youth swim lessons are becoming available at Rinconada Pool. This is, these offerings are for registration will be opening on March 3rd. The sessions last 11 weeks and times are on the slide. Next. Coverly updates. So just last week, City Council had a visioning session for the Coverly Community Center. There is a project webpage on the city's webpage. On that webpage, there is signups for project newsletter, so you can get all the updates there, a lot of robust background information, and then upcoming engagement opportunities. On March 19th, there will be the first community meeting taking place at Coverly from 6 to 8. And this is the first of 3 opportunities. So again, we just are encouraging you to sign up for that newsletter on the project page to get all the updates there. Next slide.
All right, so following up on Esther Clark, we've had a lot of interest in this project. So in last November, Grassroots Ecology planted, over 100 acorns and buckeye seeds across 49 different locations. On the south side, we had 21, and on the north side, they had 28 sections. In collaboration with Grassroots Ecology, staff will be planting 3 buckeyes and 2 big leaf maples in the upcoming season. Next slide. Briones Park, what you're seeing here is 4 different slides. They were past their useful life, and so we had the 4 slides replaced to ensure the safety and continual use by the children of the community. Next slide. Over at Ramos Park, there's a construction project over there with the playground. As you can see, they put in a new playground set, rubberized surface with the bark over there. The playground will be completed once the new swings have been installed over the next several weeks. Next slide. Cameron Park. This one was basically a big project that put in also a full playground over there. They did some turf renovations. They did connectivity of the concrete pathway you see there with amenities of new drinking fountain and several new benches in there as well. And that project was completed about maybe a month or a month and a half ago. Next slide. And just following up on one more item. So next month, just as a heads up, we'll be bringing an action item on the Eleanor Party Park restroom survey. As you've heard, so we've had a lot of people that have been interested in this one as well. And the survey was concluded earlier this month. That's the end of my report.
Thank you. Any questions from staff or from commission members for staff? Commissioner Kleinhaus?
I have a number of questions. Thank you for the update on Esther Clark. When you plant acorns and put buckeye seeds, squirrels get them. So do we have any follow-up on how many of those actually germinated? How many of them are actually becoming trees, or we just put squirrel food out there?
Well, we basically, they are going to be monitoring them. They are flagged, each of the locations. They can plant 2 to 3 acorns per flag area in anticipation of the potential loss over there. So yes, Grassroots will be working with staff on an ongoing to monitor and take a look at those as well.
Okay, and you said that 3 buckeyes and 2 big leaf maples are going to be planted?
From containers, yes.
Okay, that's good. Can we add some oaks?
That's a possibility. We can take a look into that. We didn't want to start the project too big. Just to give it a little bit of time. We know that these are faster growing species, the big oak, but definitely we can take a look into that, Shawnee, our commissioner.
Thank you. I actually would say plant, and then if you lose some, you lose some, but don't go gradually over the next 40 years. There were a lot of trees that were lost there, more than 30, and there were large trees. So 5 buckeyes don't, 5 trees altogether, and hopefully some of the acorns will germinate. It's not fast enough. I have a question about the plastic in the playgrounds. We got a lot of outcry about use of plastic in playgrounds at Ballware. I wasn't aware there was going to be plastic turf there. Now I see that Ramus also has plastic, and it looks like every playground has plastic underneath it. Do we not have some kind of policy to look at more natural?
Well, Ramos Park, that's a rubberized surface, I believe, on that port in place, instead of the synthetic turf of, what they currently have over at Boulware, Rinconada, and some of the other places. Definitely, we've heard people, they are definitely concerned. We've had ongoing meetings. And that will be, there's a study coming up not only on the fields, but potentially, depending on where we go, there'll be information to where the public can voice their concerns on March 17th.
rubberized materials, all this stuff is all petroleum-based materials that I really think we should get away from. And I think that it's unfortunate that we continue to use it. We also see a lot of need for replacement, like what happened with both plastic turf, which needed to be replaced before we thought it would be. They were supposed to have a long shelf life, so to speak, and it didn't. And then the magical playground had to be replaced. And so these things are not as sturdy as they seem. And I just find that kind of upsetting that we continue to do that. And I'm just voicing an opinion here, but we really need to look at alternatives to these materials. Back to the comment by Dasha Leeds about Emily Renzo and the vegetation management. I brought this up before, that it seems like Public Works goes and just cuts all the vegetation once a year, every year, prior to the nesting season, which is good. But still, they cut all of it, which means that there is no place for the birds that come there now to find a place to nest. There is no marsh wrens, there's no hiding places. Everything has been really decimated. And it's not clear why they even need this, but suppose it's needed. It's really important to manage our baylands in a way that's wildlife friendly and habitat friendly, and it's not, and especially this place, and it's not managed that way. So I hope there's more coordination between you and Public Works, so this doesn't happen next year. This is what I have for now. I had some more, but I'll let other people speak.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Yudi, go ahead.
Just have one question for Steve. I know the Copley Field restroom is scheduled to start the phase 2 on February 18th. Did it start on time?
My understanding is yes, that it has started.
Great. And it will complete in 2 to 3 weeks, correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay.
It's on track.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
Yep, I think we all are. It's gonna be nice.
Great.
I'm sorry, could you repeat, when is the restroom supposed to be completed?
Within about 3 weeks, I believe, right?
Yeah, right now they're connecting to utilities.
The restrooms themselves were installed, and then they were waiting for basically the infrastructure, basically for the pump systems to be connected into the mains. So they're actively working on that now.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, definitely looking forward to it. Commissioner,
Thank you. Is there an update on the first T agreement?
On the first T agreement, we're still actively working on that. We just did some preliminary work, taking a look at the heights of the netting and a trajectory study on that one. So that's going to come into play, working in collaboration with the first T.
Good.
And so we have a meeting that is intended to be scheduled within the next 2 weeks with the first T to keep that going.
So this is the first agreement, not the second agreement. This is
the second agreement. This is basically the long-term agreement that we're working on now. The short term was done some time ago.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Shavaya?
Thanks, Vice Chair Greenfield. Thanks for the great update, and I'm glad the events went well on Valentine's Day, and looking forward to the March 29th event as well. So I did connect Kristen to Neighbors Board. We both, UDNR and the board, which we can contribute quite a bit. We were looking forward to contribute to the 8 countries, different world cultural attributes to that event. And also there's another event on the same day. I believe there's a youth pickleball event. So I'm really glad the team's working really hard to invigorate the local community. So the only concern I have is similar to Commissioner Kleinhaus just mentioned about the synthetic turf. So do we have a final results of the Santa Clara County report because they were doing voting report both for artificial turf as well as synthetic grass. The question is whether we have the budget to change the current newly built parks to natural turfs instead of synthetic turfs, and also the harm they may do for children playing on them.
The next steps in this is basically to go to council and present on that on March 17th. And what they're going to be determining is to see if we can bring on a consultant to help park staff with this, to come up with different recommendations possibly and fact finding on the health benefits and all the things that essentially are of concern with the public, and whether to convert it to natural or leave it synthetic, that'll be yet to be determined pending on the study.
Thank you. So is the challenge mainly the matter of budget, or it's a matter of just facts finding?
We're basically going to be doing the study, and the study will lead us in a direction that will enable us to make a decision on what direction to go to.
Got it. Okay. Thanks so much for
You're welcome.
Other thorough investigation. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Shawnee?
One more question. Do you have an update on the tide gate and what is happening with our tide gate and whether the flow to the basin can be restored to?
So the application, the final application to U.S. Fish and Wildlife has been submitted and is currently in the phase of being under review. And so once we get feedback from that, and if we get a final approval on that, then we can proceed with establishing the work to clean the gates of the barnacles and everything that are on there. We already have a company that we're looking into that can do the work for us. It's going to require divers because right now the gate is frozen in place, and that's because the barnacles and it not being in operation for about the 4 years. So we are still moving on that, yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Just catching up with my notes. Thank you for the report. Appreciate it. It's great to see the pictures and it's great to see the progress coming at the playgrounds. Things have been in the queue for a long time. I have a few questions. The Briones Park slide replacement, I didn't catch it. Is that a normal life cycle budgeted item, or is that something that was addressing an issue?
That's addressing basically as comes out of our emergency funds. That's an unanticipated repair that we had to do to make it still be functional and safe for the children there.
So what happened? I just missed it.
Well, the age of the playgrounds are coming towards the end of their life. And what was happening, we were observing that they weren't unsafe yet, but they were getting to that point to where they were warping and bubbling, and we were seeing defects in the slides that could potentially become a problem. So what we do is we are proactive on it to make sure that we're making sure that it's going to be continually safe for use and replacing it before the need.
Sounds like a great plan. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just looking at, I hadn't heard about it, so I was just looking to get clarification, make sure I hadn't missed something. Which, just to clarify on the synthetic field study, that has been approved by City Council. It has not.
That has not. That was pulled on the January agenda, and then we were requested to come back and then present on that one. So that'll be coming in front of council on March 17th.
We'll be coming to council when?
I believe March 17th is when we're slated to go to council.
That's what's happening, March 17th.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification on that. Regarding the Renzel Pond vegetation management issue, my first reaction was to request that staff follow up with the Commission Open Space Preserve liaisons, Commissioner Kleinhaus, myself, so just get more information on that.
Absolutely.
And it does sound like something that we've been talking about for a while, and the same thing, history repeats itself. So I don't know if it would be appropriate to arrange a meeting at some point with the commission liaisons and Public Works Engineering to discuss this further. Leave it for staff's recommendation on that, but just an idea to throw out if that would be something that would help.
We can do that. It makes sense.
Thank you.
On site.
You got it.
On site, okay, yes. That's good. Appreciate the public comments we had earlier regarding Pardee Park and the survey that's out and comments regarding evidence of what's happening at other community parks. It would be helpful, I think, when you come to the commission to include information about the status of the new restroom at Ramos Park, at Piers Park. These are parks, a little bit smaller than Pardee Park, but somewhat comparable information. And I think that any information you can share with the commission on how those restrooms have been received, issues that you've had with them, just general information to the commission, I think would be helpful.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's all I got. Anything else from anyone?
An update on how the dog park at Mitchell is working out, with like how many people use it, what do people think about it? That would be nice to have too.
We can bring that to a future agenda. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Or even just
or just an update.
just a staff report update.
I mean, the feedback, I mean, just from what we've seen so far, it's been very well received. We've had a lot of positive, comments from users, people reaching out, saying how much they really like the improvements that were made. There were a lot of upgrades that we did, from the surfacing to basically being able to use it within a relatively short period of time after the rains, where that wasn't possible before. We fixed all the drainage issues that were out there. And then the only thing that we have to, continually put out there is a few more benches. That's the only, but it's been well received overall.
That's great. Thanks. And if you give us an update in the next staff report, then maybe we'll get some photos too.
Yeah, we'll include some happy dogs.
Always a good way to start off the meeting. Okay, I think we're now ready for our first business item.
All right.
Which is
Next,
the information update on Bixby Park Western Trail temporary closure.
great. Thank you. Next on the agenda, we have a project engineer, Sue Ching, who will provide an informational update on the sewer pipeline and rehabilitation project.
Good evening, commissioners. So we'd like to provide you update on the 72-inch joint intercepting sewer rehab projects. Presenting here with me via Zoom is Mr. Michael Randall with a design consulting firm, Jacobs Engineering. The design team includes subject matter expert in pipe rehabilitation as well as biological survey. With that, I'm going to turning over the presentation to Mike.
Thank you, Sue. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Yep, so we're giving a quick update on the progress of the project, which, as mentioned, has some impacts to trails in the vicinity there at Bixby Park. So if we can jump to the next slide here. What was identified in looking at the city's sewer infrastructure coming into your wastewater treatment plant is the existing 60 to 72-inch diameter sewer that runs along one of the access roads. We'll see a map here in a moment at Bixby Park, is in pretty poor condition. So the city is being proactive in rehabilitating the 2,400 linear feet that's in the most disarray or lowest remaining useful life, and rehabilitating that so it's not a risk to the public or to sewer flows in the future. So this infrastructure shares the beautiful park that you all are commissioners over. So we're here at this meeting to kind of present the project updates and give you a little bit of information on project schedule, as well as go over the closures that the public will be seeing during the implementation of this project later this year. So here's a map. You'll see Bixby Park labeled there. The portion of the sewer line that's getting rehabilitated is what you see in blue. The sewer line upstream of that in green. Some of these manholes will be accessed as part of the project. But you'll notice, the biggest part that's within the park rehab area is there from what we're calling MH3 and MH4, which are the access manholes along the sewer pipeline. And they share that access road right down against the Balins. So during the project, that's the area we'll be talking about here for these updates. But just to note, we're also rehabilitating that pipeline all the way back into the plant as part of the project. So here's just a quick picture. I had to see it as we worked through it, so I'm going to share it with all of you. But this is a condition assessment video of inside that section of sewer. Have corrosion inside of it, which has got exposed rebar, which is not good for these cement mortar or these concrete pipelines. So the city, again, is being proactive and trying to rehabilitate this in the least intrusive way possible to kind of reinstate its use for sewer conveyance. And hopefully not have to get in here for another 75 to 100 years after the project is done in this area. So since we haven't been out there doing the work yet, I don't have a photo of what the setup is going to look like exactly on your site, but here's one that's of, very similar situation that we were doing in another part in the country. But basically, we'll have a trailer there on site. We'll show you where that'll be positioned along the trail, and then they're going to invert the liner from an existing manhole. Your excavations are actually a little less intrusive than this. Just due to the size of the manholes and being able to get in and do this rehabilitation from those manholes. So the footprint has been pretty limited. You'll see a bunch of pipelines out there currently. Those are for the bypass pipelines that we can maintain sewer flow to the plant while we're in here doing this rehabilitation. And then here's some examples of where the city has some projects. So I'm going to hand it back over to Sue to talk about this and then a recent project that the city of Mountain View did.
Basically, the city utility has rehabilitated the sewer pipe using this cast in place pipe technology. We have completed about 4.5 miles of pipe rehab. Next slide. Back in 2022, we visited CIPP of pipelining installation at City of Mountain View within the Shoreline Park at the Gulf Coast area. The pipe that was being rehabbed is 42-inch diameter. The construction activities were limited to paved parking lot and minimal grass area where the manhole was located. The City of Mountain View coordinate closely the work with the Shoreline Park and Gulf Coast staff. They have in-house biologists who perform biological survey before construction and during constructions. They secure the sensitive area using fencing, and they set up one-way burrow doors to allow animals to pass through. Those pumps, they were equipped with sound enclosure. They limited the sound 50 feet away from the pumps, less than 86 decibels.
So starting here in March or April, the project team is going to be back out on site, finishing a few activities. They got some of the manhole reconstruction and prepared for the bypass completed last year. Kind of waiting for the wet season to get over before we get out there. So we'll be confirming that as we move here out of the springtime. So they're going to be inspecting and cleaning the section of sewer that they're going to be rehabilitating to prepare for the cast in place pipe liner that will be installed again from that manhole along that blue alignment we saw to the treatment facility. Sewer bypass pumping is going to be from the 2 upstream manholes within the park. We'll show you a map here in a second, but that's basically where we're going to be picking up flow and bypassing it around the project during the duration of the actual curing. And rough construction cost for the project is about $9 million. So again, work's going to be starting here in March and going until about October, November. We've got some flexibility in here just to deal with any potential construction delays, either from weather or acts of God that occur during the project duration. So the big heavy part that's going to be affecting park goers is going to be in that June to October timeframe when we're going to have the bypass piping installed. Oh, sorry, March to July, where they're going to be doing the actual bypass pumping. And then we have 3 weeks of doing the pipelining where they're going to actually invert the new liner inside the pipe and cure it. Work activities, about 30% of this project is within the physical confines of the plant. And then the other 70% is along your access there on Embarcadero Way, up the access road, and then into that part of Bixby Park. So we'll talk about the traffic and trail detours that are going to be there for those. We're limiting construction traffic to the extent possible for material deliveries and fuel deliveries for the generators that are there for the pumps that are there pumping the bypass flows. And then the construction team is going to be informing and coordinating through the city plant staff. Make sure we're coordinating with both the landfill folks and the park, right? We have 3 different city departments that are all working together to bring this project successfully to fruition. So again, we talked about the necessity here and a bunch of pre-planning during design that went into establishing safe and recognizable detours for the public utilizing the park. Also setting up fences to isolate the construction area so that we don't have issues with people coming in, as well as, meeting the park commission's desires and regulations to keep those fences high to allow for animals to be able to maneuver underneath them, but still restrict access for the public from the construction area. So balancing those needs proactively, and then providing traffic control flaggers. So there is some access that's needed outside of that fencing. So the contractor will be walking with those trucks at a low speed with flaggers and signaling to the public. So again, moving into this next construction season, we actually have biologists going out tomorrow morning at 5 o'clock to pre-walk the site ahead of any construction activities to kind of do the pre-bird surveys and biological surveys ahead of this year's construction season window. That way, if we find anything, we can use our biologist staff to prepare any type of mitigation necessary to do the construction within the confines of the CEQA documents. Also performing most of this construction during the daytime where possible. The portions that need to be done at night are the 24/7 operations, which is the sewer bypass pumping, as well as the pipelining. So that time will be May through July. We're trying to work with the contractor to try and limit this to the extent possible and get in and out and on with life. Also, limiting the construction activities to the developed areas. So here on the next slide, we'll see where the work areas are. We worked very closely with the park staff and rangers to identify laydown areas and work limits that would try and limit the amount of impact to land access and really stay out of those spots that weren't developed previously for trail access or access for the landfill. And again, like I mentioned, we're providing that 6 to 8 inches of clearance below the fencing for wildlife to pass. Also implementing sound shields on each of the pumps in order to attenuate the sound they're making to try and limit impacts both to the surrounding neighbors, which is the landfill and the plant folks, but also park goers during the day. And then limiting the illumination to what's necessary for that night work with shields on lighting and just limiting those areas that are required for worker safety during the implementation of the project. So as you can see on this figure, the yellow areas is what we've limited the contractors' staging and laydown areas to. So they will be accessing this from the Embarcadero Way or from the left side of this figure to get to the site, but there won't be staging equipment or anything outside of these yellow areas. So we've limited them to a pretty tight corridor in order to get the work done to try and limit the impact both to the park goers and to the natural environment around the project. So some of these signs you've probably seen if you've been out to the park. These are the signs that were developed for the project that show the trail closure as well as the surrounding area. There's some photos of the sign locations just before we were about to embark on the work last year. These signs will be maintained by the contractor to maintain the detour around the bypass work that's being done. So we go to the next slide, it'll kind of show a zoomed in view of this. So again, the portions of the work where the contractor will be are shown here in red. So those are the temporary trail closures as identified on the map. And then we clearly have denoted the detour route for those park users to be able to get up and utilize Bixby Park and enjoy the Baylands while the project is being commenced. Again, limited that closure to a spot that just cuts off the access there on Embarcadero Way, where the bypass activities are occurring. And then as you can see from this map, we've identified where those detour locations are with the circles. So there's clear detour signs directing the public back onto their intended course for those travelers that were temporarily detoured. And then we've got project signs at the square location. I think there's actually 2 of them. I think the other one's at the circle there near Adobe Creek Trail. So here's some photos of the work that was done last year showing the elevated fencing and the alignment of those bypass pipelines up and out of the trail. Again, we've limited the contractor's access as much as possible to minimize the impact to the public, but still trying to give them room to work in here. So they've got a pretty tidy workspace out there and having to be a little nimble about working in this area. But yep, we're not planning to have to extend outside this area during the construction window. So again, just some more photos of work that was done. Here again are those bypass pipes coming through the park entrance, and then some of the fencing and bypass pumps set up near manhole number 5 along the existing trail. And again, once all this work is done, Sue's contract has the contractor rehabilitating this trail to its existing condition and making it like we weren't even here, which is the intent of closing out the project here towards the end of October. And then for those of you that are curious, here's some photos of the bypass plant inside the plant. Luckily didn't have to pick up too much of these ancillary sewer tie-in connections outside of the plant footprint. That would have required a much larger staging area. So the majority of that staging is being done within the confines of the treatment plant, not out in the public facing areas or in the park. So. And then again, we met with all of you during the design, and then last year when we were getting ready to do the construction previously. But again, just to recognize that we're aware of the Baylands Nature Preserve design guidelines. So again, limiting our light usage to those areas that are just absolutely necessary for worker safety and requiring shielding on any temporary lighting being used during those night work hours. And then the sound attenuation, limiting that per our construction documents to 110 decibels, and doing everything we can to even get it below that to limit impact to park goers. So these are the locations where temporary lighting is going to be provided during the project. These are mainly around each of the bypass locations. So again, luckily the majority of these locations are located within the treatment plant site itself. And the contractor will be working to just illuminate those areas where the bypass pump systems are located themselves. And when those activities don't need monitoring, try and have those lights off and have personnel, using their own lights to safely navigate to each of these locations. So these are the ones inside the plant footprint, and the next slide will show you the ones that are located outside of the plant footprint. So again, we have these located at each of the manholes to light up those work areas. And then again, the main location of staging will be around this manhole number 3, where it calls out the CIPP inversion location. So that area is the area that'll have the most lighting, just to help provide during that 3-week period when they're doing the actual installation of the liner, to light up that area when the inversion itself, the 24-hour lining process is taking place. And again, we're assuming those lining activities will likely take less than 3 weeks, probably 1 week to do the shot from this location back towards the plant, and then another 3 or 4 days to do from this back towards manhole number 4 along the access trail at Bixby Park. And then we also have bypass locations, like I mentioned, at manhole number 5 and manhole number 6. So those areas will also have temporary lighting, and again, shielded to limit that to just light up the bypass footprint at each of those manholes. Then here again, just showing the sign, and we've got a QR code on there too for the public to find more information about the project, kind of direct them to the public outreach information that's available for the project online. And that's what I had prepared. We definitely can walk through any questions folks have on it, but just wanted to kind of give an update for folks to understand what to expect. And then as those members of the public are coming to you as commissioners, and those of you in the public listening, give you kind of an insight of what's to come here March through October.
So I want to comment that the project is scheduled to be complete by the end of October, but we request to have the closure until end of November, just in case there's any construction delay. So as soon as we finish the project, we will plan on opening up as soon as possible. With that, we open to questions, comments.
Thank you for the presentation. We'll have an opportunity for clarifying questions from the commission. Before the commission makes a more substantive comments, we'll open up the opportunity for public comment on this, either in person or by raising your hand via Zoom. Any clarifying comments from the commission first? Shani?
Can you explain more about the lighting? Why do we need to have 24/7 lighting and not a switch that can be turned on if somebody needs to go check something? If you don't have 24/7 presence of workers, why do you need 24/7 lighting and not, you could have a motion sensor light, and then if somebody gets there, the light goes on and then they turn on a switch or something, or a remote switch. I'm going to work today.
So Commissioner Kleinhaus, if I could interrupt, I think this is not.
I want to understand why.
But this is not a clarifying question, I think. So let's save
All
this
right,
until
we can talk about it later,
we
I
have an
guess.
opportunity for public comment. And
Okay.
you can think about your answer on that.
I want to clarify, the lighting won't be on 24/7. Only during nighttime, each station will have an on-off switch. So when the contractor need to approach a specific pump station, for example, they'll drive the truck to that location, physically turn on the switch, doing the work they needed. The work include maintaining the pumps and inspecting the pumps for performance. Once the work is done, they will turn the switch off and demobilize away from the area. So they'll do that from station to station throughout the night.
Thank you.
Next, are there any clarifying questions before we reach out to for public comment? Thanks. It looks like we have at least one hand raised. Last time I looked.
We have one public comment from Dashel L.
Thank you. Let's hear from Dashel.
Hello, commissioners. This is Dasha Leeds again with the Sierra Club Loma Prieta chapter. This project may potentially happen at the same time as the construction of the tide gate structure by Valley Water, which closes public access and trails and has environmental impacts. It may also potentially happen at the same time as the horizontal levee project, and there may be some additional projects that could overlap with this. My question is, how are these projects coordinated for the protection of natural resources and for access? Thanks.
To our knowledge, these two projects.
Excuse me, we'll give you an opportunity
Oh, sorry.
to
Go ahead.
respond later. We don't respond directly to public comment, but if a commissioner asks you for via feedback on that, then you'll have an opportunity. And is that the end of public comments? Thank you. And thank you for speaking. Shani, would you like to continue?
Well, thank you for answering my previous question because I misunderstood and thought that there was going to be light all the time in some of those areas. So thank you, I appreciate it. And I appreciate the attention to wildlife in general. I have a few sort of half questions, half comments here. The places where manhole 3 and 6 are important for wildlife connectivity. MH3, there was a den of gray foxes there many years ago. They're about 10 years ago, I think. By now, they're not in our baylands anymore, but they were there. And they actually had a den inside a pipe. There was a pile of pipes there that were used for some project, and the den was in those pipes. Boring owls also can use pipes that are just left alone in areas. So I guess my comment here is make sure there's nothing in pipes that are lying around before you use them. Like if you're gonna, or make sure that there's no access into them. If you're going to put pipes that you're gonna be using in the project, either they should be inaccessible to wildlife or they should be inspected for wildlife use before they're used. So that is one question. And then, what's the other one? Yeah, this is a question really. It's the MH3 is in the same area that the pipe that brings water from the baylands to the marsh is located, right? I think more or less in the same place, so.
It's further west.
Hmm?
It's in the same vicinity, but
Yeah.
different pipe. The one bringing to the marsh is further on the west, to the west.
So there is
We are aware
no
of that.
interaction or,
No.
or,
There's no connection.
okay.
Excuse me, could we look at the map as we're talking about this, please?
Slide number 11.
Okay, so you can see MH3, that's where the pipe goes between Bixby Park and kind of goes near there. So I was just want to make sure that you're paying attention to that.
Yeah, I believe that tidal outlet structure is just a little bit to the left of where the mouse cursor's at. Yeah.
Well, you'll have to cross it, right? Because you have two perpendicular pipes going there. So they can be at this different elevation, but you need to make sure that one of them doesn't perforate the other.
Yeah, so we're below it and we're not physically excavating down to the pipeline. That's what's nice about this technology is we're just rehabbing it from within the pipe.
Okay. Thank you. And my last question for now is the question that Mr. Leeds brought up about timing, and are there other projects that are potentially going to either close trails or have additional impacts in the same, at Bixby Park and the environment around it at the same time?
So to our knowledge, the horizontal levee has been postponed. The horizontal levee project is not going to be concurrent with this sewer rehab project.
And the other one with Valley Water and the tide gate, I believe that's supposed to commence in September. And that will proceed, I believe, until I think it was March.
Maybe a little bit of overlap, but not too much.
No, and they're very far apart.
The
Yeah, but-
pipelining will be complete by the end of July.
Okay.
And then between July and October is mainly site restorations and then manhole rehab.
They're far apart, but they're impacting trail access.
Yeah.
Correct. Yes. We will have the park rangers that are out there with a supervising park ranger. We're coordinating it with each individual project. And there's going to be ample notification, and we're going to try to minimize the inconvenience as much as possible with the bypasses.
Actually, before we move forward, I do have a clarifying question. Was a park improvement ordinance required for this work to be done, to be approved previously?
On which one?
The work that's being done now, or the work that's being planned for the sewer line work.
For the sanitary sewer?
Yeah, it's part of the site restorations,
Excuse me?
site improvement. It's required as part of the contract, restore to original conditions.
No, I think there's a separate park improvement ordinance that would have been done.
We can look into that and get back, but I don't believe one went to city council, but we can get back to the commission on that.
So it'd be good to understand better if a park improvement ordinance was not required for this work within the nature preserve, what determines, what sets the criteria for when a PIO is required and when it's not required?
We can follow up on that.
Yep, thank you.
And it's not really a question about this project, but if you can give us a little update about what's happening with the horizontal levee, that would be good. They did come here and we supported the project, so we would like to know what's happening there.
We can take a look at that as well.
Thank you.
And that could be potentially, if there's something substantive to discuss, it could be something to agendize for a future meeting. Commissioner Cripps?
No, just to say thank you for the presentation, and I was pleased how thoughtful you were about the animals and the wildlife and all of that. I think that's really important. Could you summarize again the communication with the residents about when and how things are going to be closed and what access is? Please.
So basically, we have signage met, and then there will be posted at specific location. On Monday, we'll be coordinating with our park rangers doing a walkthrough when we install the fencing to make sure the site is secure. In terms of project updates, the signage has a QR code and a URL that can take you to city website. Providing information on any updates. If there's delay, it will be posted. Hopefully that won't happen.
And that goes in the city's website as well, and also in any updates that go to the residents?
On the park website, there's updates on there.
So if people are interested, they can look on the project page if they have that on the city website.
And then my email is on there.
And is that project page easily discoverable by going to Bixby Park and there's links?
Yes, it's accessible through a QR code, which is available on the signage itself.
No, but if someone is going to browse the city website and they go to the Bixby Park page, do they see any notification that there's being work done, and can they access it in that manner?
We did that last year and we'll do that this year too.
Yes, please.
Yes, it will be.
Want to have multiple paths to enjoy the information.
And I have just one last question. How many people will be working at the site at one time?
Mike, you want to help me with that?
Yeah, so the majority of the time, we're gonna have 2 people there maintaining the bypass, right, and watching that 24/7 during that activity. And then throughout the day, when they're preparing for the work, there'll probably be 2 crews of about 3 individuals that are going to be preparing the work. And then when they get to the actual wet out, there's probably going to be 5 people from SAK there in addition to those watching the bypass, depending on their staffing levels and, natures of their crews and who's available. And then we also have the city CM and city staff that will also be out there while those work activities are being performed.
Thank you.
Commissioner Wei?
Sorry, I was coughing away. Yeah, I'm delighted with the progress of the project, and thanks so much for moving this ahead. That's all I have today. Thanks.
Judy?
Thank you, Vice President, Chair. I was reading on page 35 and 36 on today's package. I just want to staff and Michael to help me understand the rationale behind the estimated percentage of the cost share between the 6 agencies. Why Palo Alto accounts for that percentage?
So this,
Sorry, could we go back to the slide, please?
I don't think it's on the slide.
It's in the staff report.
It's in the
report.
packet.
That's in the staff report, right? Okay.
So basically, this sewer line carry flows from City of Mountain View, Palo Alto, Los Altos, and Los Altos Hill. And the percentage is based on the the flow that's contributed by each of the city sewer sheds.
So it's a cost share between the
Cost share.
different cities who
I see.
utilize
So
the
there was
pipeline.
like a monitor to track the flow.
We have flow meters. We know exactly how much flows we're getting from each partner.
I see. Okay, so it's pretty accurate. Thank you. Good to know.
I have some, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I appreciate the report in the packet and the information you're giving us. It's a lot to try and get your arms around. So the surface pipe, the bypass pipe that's being put in, is this going to be over the entire area that's being lined? So it's not, you're not doing one section at a time. It's everything's being done. And
That's correct.
okay, and so the primary trail closure. Can you review again what the trail closure periods will be?
March 3rd until October 30th this year, and potentially into November, just to account for any potential delay. So it's March until November at most.
And okay, and appreciate that the signage that's being put out. That's always good to make sure we're doing everything we can to avoid surprising our community members who like to use this for recreation purposes. I have a question about the service life. The staff report indicated the service life would be extended by 25 to 50 years. And Mike said it would be, his comment was, hopefully we won't have to redo anything for another 75 to 100 years. Is that?
Yeah, so the rehabilitation of the pipeline itself has a design life of 50 to 100 years. Now, there's other infrastructure along this, which is why the staff report identifies that 20 to 50-year range, right? So some of the manholes and surface improvements, this project isn't going to magically invent stuff that doesn't rust, right? You being this close to the ocean, you're susceptible to those things. So the staff report's just clarifying that the city has additional rehabilitation work that's needed in this area, but hopefully we're not having to get in and touch the sewer for another 50 or 100 years. So none of us are around for those. Yeah.
So the work you're doing should cover that area, that particular point of failure for 75 to 100 years, but there's other there's other reasons that the sewer line might not last that long. But thank you for the clarification. That makes sense.
Yep.
That's basically the questions I have, but I am interested in the follow-up on the PIO. I'm a little confused why that would be required.
Will do.
Any other comments or questions from commissioners? Well, thank you for addressing this. It sounds like it's obviously something that needs to be done, and we appreciate your taking the appropriate approach to be respectful and mindful of the environmental preservation in the area and also the recreation desires of the community. So thank you for the well thought out approach.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Sue. Should we continue with our next item?
Yes, I was just getting to that. And actually, before we do that, I want it looks like City Council Member Lethcott Hames is with us, and she's been designated as our City Council liaison for this year. So just wanted to welcome her. Yeah. And then let's go ahead and with the informational update from Canopy.
Great, thank you. If we can load up the presentation. And next we have Evany Wong and JP Renaud, who will provide a mid-year report for Canopy.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is JP Renaud, and I am the executive director of Canopy. As we were preparing this presentation, we realized that we have actually not presented as an organization in front of this body for quite a while. So I want to first thank you and be grateful for your invitation to do so. Canopy has been in this community for almost 30 years, and we're proud to be born from this community. And today's presentation will be a glimpse of what we do in this community, but at no means a complete picture of what Canopy does, not just in Palo Alto, but in 5 communities that surround Palo Alto. Again, proudly born from Palo Alto. Next slide. So as I mentioned, Canopy was founded in 1996, almost 30 years ago. Mark your calendars, next year will be our 30th anniversary. And this is an important part. It was born from a group of committed and concerned residents who wanted to make sure that their canopy and their trees were being protected. They were visionary people. But as I said, it was born from residents concerned about their trees. Since then, Canopy has grown outside of Palo Alto, thanks to your support, into 4 other communities. In Santa Clara County, we have expanded into Mountain View, and in San Mateo County, we have expanded into East Palo Alto, the North Fair Oaks neighborhood, which is an unincorporated neighborhood in San Mateo County, and the Bellhaven neighborhood of Menlo Park. In all of these communities, including Palo Alto, we plant where trees are needed the most. So in Palo Alto, we plant south of the Oregon Expressway because those communities have about half the number of trees and the canopy coverage that the rest of the city does. So the rest of the city is about 37%. South of the Oregon Express is about half that. So we want to make sure that everyone has equal access to the benefits and power of trees that we all deserve. Before I bring my colleague Evany along to speak specifically about what we do, what we've done this year in Palo Alto, I want to speak a little bit about what community forestry means. Community forestry is a little different than what my friend Peter does. It's a little different than what our colleagues in private landscaping does. What we do requires and demands people to be part of the solution. We never plant a tree or care for a tree alone. We need your help. We want the community to be involved, not just because we need you to be involved, but because if the community, if people, if your neighbors, if you are involved in planting a tree at your local school, at your park, in your neighborhood, you will have a sense of ownership and belonging for that community that will go far beyond what that day meant to you. We will have built a community of people. When you come to one of our plantings, you will meet new people that you would have never met had you not come to our plantings. And that community of people that came together for one common cause can build a coalition that can solve many other issues, not just the one that we're trying to solve. And so when Ebony comes up and talks about the number of trees and the number of events we do, remember that it is all powered by people caring for the earth, caring for this community, caring for the future. Thank you.
Good evening, commissioners. Like JP mentioned, my name is Ebony Wang, and I'm the Community Forestry Coordinator for Canopy, specifically for the Palo Alto and Mountain View communities. So far, what I've been doing in Palo Alto is focus more on tree planting and helping coordinate volunteer efforts to get more trees and then really talk to residents to get them more engaged in wanting trees and learning about trees. So just for the sake of time, I was just going to kind of boil it down, I guess, to some of the things that we've done this season, or so far up to this day. So as of today, we've had 2 community planting events, one in November where we had our hugest volunteer turnout in Palo Alto since the pandemic, of over 100 volunteers, 100 community members. We're including specific other community organizations, either from Palo Alto specifically or even broader, some even coming out from Alameda County. But also we have had a lot of volunteers who come out just to plant single trees if we can't fit them into a community planting. By community planting, I mean we group them together from like a central park or a central location, and it's a 10-minute walking distance, and we have volunteers come out and do that. Some volunteers will come out and just do one-offs during the weekdays. By one-offs, I mean like one house, a couple of trees each there. And so far to this day, we've planted about 48 out of the scheduled 120 trees for this fiscal year / planting season, with the remaining to be planted before the end of May, which is kind of like where we stretch the planting season. Some of those trees that we plant are actually at specifically South Palo Alto schools in the Palo Alto Unified School District, and that is for us to maintain a positive relationship between the city and the school district, which so far has been absolutely beautiful. And because of that, other organizations like Neighbors Abroad has come to Canopy to, get trees for their schools, to get their delegations from other international cities to kind of really get involved in Palo Alto. And those trees really can't be planted without the help of the city of Palo Alto. So they're just as aware of City of Palo Alto's role in helping us get the word out about trees, and trees are a great way to bridge international communities as well. Other ways we engage with schools is really just working with like local school clubs. For example, Gun Green Team. They come out in the spring during their early out days to plant close by to their school, basically anywhere in South Palo Alto. They'll come either by bike or carpool, but it's really great to engage a very close local school group. And a lot of them really do end up going on telling us about all the cool things they do later on, and it's really great to build that kind of community. Next slide, please. For the education side, we focus a lot more on adult education in Palo Alto with interactive tree walks. So far, we have had one, the edible urban forest, and then in September, we had one at the Junior Museum. Other adult education that we focus a lot on in Palo Alto is our community forestry school, which is a free 9-week online introduction to urban forestry, which includes 3 hands-on fieldwork. And that includes learning how to look at a site and figure out where trees can fit and what kind of trees are beneficial in that area or are suitable for that area. We do tree planting. We show them how we plant trees and how they can plant trees in their own spaces, and how to care for their trees, as well as any other trees that they come on or that they come across. Otherwise, education-wise, we do work with the schools that we've been working with to show kids, get as engaged with the young ones as possible to show them how great it is to plant a tree. Next, we have our 4 volunteer tree care workshops. So far, we have 3 scheduled, 1 completed, and the dates are as listed up there. Other than that, we do also offer up to 3 years of tree care for any tree planted by Canopy. And if you haven't received any care from us for some reason or another, we do still make a commitment to go out there and check to see how those trees are doing, regardless of how long it's been. Other ways that we try to get tree care in, and by tree care, I just mean caring for the trees, is our tree hotline, which is an online form for anyone in the public from any area to have their tree questions answered, as well as helping the city with administering the Right Tree, Right Place program, which is helping Palo Alto residents assess tree risks in relation to power lines. Next slide, please. Last couple, or the next couple would be the Great Oak Count, which as of today, we are on track to be completed in spring 2025. And so far, we've engaged 250 volunteers plus and provided training for both the surveyors and survey leaders to be able to go out and do that on their own. We are maybe 95% complete and should be done when the leaves come out again. With Young Tree Care Survey, this is an annual summer program that we really do focus on engaging our community members, especially our youth who aren't necessarily doing anything in the summer, but it's a great opportunity for them to hang out with their friends or even just learn about the surveying side of tree care. And we do that throughout all of Palo Alto, not just South Palo Alto, because this is mostly focused on street trees or public trees that either Canopy has helped the city plant in the public right-of-ways, or just trees that the city has planted throughout the last 5 years. The next few slides are going to be some images, some photos of tree walks and tree care workshops that we've hosted. The captions are at the bottom. But a lot of these really do highlight how we've really tried to engage community members, even inviting the community to come out and celebrate the mayor's tree planting last March of Mayor Greerstone, of which we are still working with the city to get the next mayor's tree planted. So to finish up, I'll give the stage to JP.
So just wanted to also give a little more context. Canopy has a tradition every year in every community that we work in to celebrate that city's mayor with a ceremonial tree planting. So every mayor that has existed, I think since Canopy has existed in Palo Alto, can find their tree somewhere in the city. I hope from this presentation, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have, you'll see that our work is not possible without community, which is why the community forestry, the community part of forestry is so important to us. We cannot do this work without our partners at the city. We hope that we are seen as an extension of their work. I don't think we can exist without them, and I hope that they will agree that their work would not be as successful without a nonprofit partner. There are community forestry nonprofits throughout the country, mostly in cities that are as progressive and forward-thinking as Palo Alto. Those community forestry nonprofits cannot be successful, nor can those governments be successful in growing their urban forests without one helping each other out. And our relationship with Palo Alto is a national model of how it can work, of how the city can do its job, and the nonprofit like Canopy can communicate and work with community to expand that work. And to finish up, to conclude, I'd like to say that Canopy will plant anywhere that there is a spot for a tree, whether it is someone's front yard, whether it's a park, whether it's an open space, whether it's a school. We need everyone involved in not only planting a tree, but accepting a tree. So with anyone within the sound of my voice, if you want a tree or want to help plant a tree, and make a difference in the world literally by just planting a tree, please contact us at canopy.org. Thank you.
Thank you, JP and Ebony. Thank you for joining us this evening. And it's always great to hear from one of our key community partners. The city has a history of partnering with a number of environmental organizations to really help do the work that the city can't do on its own, and also with more extended arms to reach out to the community to really get the community involvement, and it's beneficial in so many ways, as you've alluded. The work gets done, but it also builds community and builds the relationships, and full transparency, I'm a member of the Canopy Advisory Board, and I've been involved with an organization for a long time. So I'm sold. But the work that the organization done is great for the community and in so many ways. Do we have any members of the public who would like to speak?
No public comments.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Then let's go ahead and go to the commission for questions and comments. Bing.
Thanks, Vice Chair Greenfield. Delightful presentation. Really glad to see that. And I also enjoyed the tree planting with Neighbors Broad as its long-term board member since 2012 in JLS. Quick question about your youth program, as I'm the youth liaison. So I want to know how you spread the word for the youth survey, and is it going through our schools or? And the second follow-up question, would you be interested to present to our Youth Leadership Council where I go every month, maybe in March?
To answer the first question, our volunteer engagement manager has a really great connection to a lot of the school community, being a parent of two children in the Palo Alto Unified School District area, and has always been super engaged in there. Her name's Indira. But she has a pretty great ongoing relationship with a lot of the schools, principals, either from previous experience or present experience. So for starters, we do reach out, she reaches out to these groups with schools individually. And then secondly, we do table at some of these schools when they invite us to share our volunteer opportunities. And around early spring is when we start advertising opportunities for the Young Tree Care Survey. I like to tell people that it's a great way to hang out with their friends or go on a really nice bike ride and still get to use their phone. For the second part, I would be interested in further advertising for the Young Tree Care Survey at any opportunity I can, as we are trying to, as I personally am trying to also get our volunteer numbers back up to pre-pandemic times. So I'd be happy to speak. My email, I can provide my email. It's Evany, EV, as in Victor, A, oh, okay. They said that they'll provide the email. So yeah, feel free to email me and I will make some time for that. Thank you.
That'd be great. So there are meetings normally Wednesday evening between 5 to 6 and every week. And it's a group of youth leaders in our city who resident in our city. They may go to our local city high schools. They're all teenagers. So it's a leadership council with 20-something people. They reach out to all the teenagers in this city. So that will be more impactful. A final question is more on behalf of Neighbors Board. If we want to plant more trees, it's a question to Steve as well. With different cities looking to California Avenue, do we work with you, Steve, your team, or do we work with Canopy directly, or?
That's something that we can take a look into. We would do it, if we have places with urban forestry, we'd work directly with them, and then potentially also collaborate with Canopy too, depending on where we would want to put trees at.
Okay, yeah, we need your guidance on that. I'll take offline with you on that.
Something I might just add regarding the volunteer contributions from the high school members of our community. There was a class in high school, a living skills class, and one component of the class is a requirement for volunteer hours. And so you can see the natural fit here. So Canopy is one of a number of organizations that our high school youth can help fulfill their volunteer hour requirement. Not that Canopy doesn't work with other ages as well, but gladly.
Yeah, that's a perfect fit. The Youth Leadership Council, they're also looking for those opportunities as well. Yeah. I'll get your email and look into a possibility to invite you to speak either March or April. Thanks so much for the wonderful presentation and the great work you've done. Thank you.
Commissioner Dang.
Thanks, Vice Chair Greenfield. And thank you so much, JP and Anthony, for a great report. So I serve on the Ohlone PTA president. So I'm curious, I've seen many wonderful programs with middle schools and high school in South Palo Alto, but have you thought about partnering with elementary schools? Little kids can plant little trees.
So you'll be happy to know, we actually have planted a few trees at Ohlone Elementary School in the last couple of years. One was to as a memorial thank you to a previous school district member who passed away, but his tree is a buckeye planted at the Ohlone Elementary School garden. And then we did plant 3 other trees just last spring. This year, we are scheduled to plant 2 more trees, and I do try to work with the administration to see how many students we can get involved. And we do have a program or a curriculum that we can adapt to essentially teaching children how to plant. And it is more hands-on. It allows them to be more hands-on. And it's very much based on talking with the administration, but we do always make that an option as opposed to just going out there and planting it ourselves. So I hope that answers your question. We do try to. I don't think there's a formal program though, but we do try to work on it as much as we can. We mostly plant in elementary schools as well.
Oh, wonderful. And if you reach out to me, then I can pass along the information to all the PTA presidents.
Maybe you could just talk a little bit more about what a tree planting event is like. And I guess
Sure. So thank you for that question. So by the time you come to a tree planting event, that's the fun part. There have been so much work coming up to getting to that point. And it's hard work. It's long work. It's steady work, but it's important work. And that's why we talk about these community forestry ideas, building community, because when we get to a planting event, we would have had to, let's say it's at a school, which let's talk about schools for a minute. Schools are right now, some schools, not all schools in Palo Alto, but just in general, schools in our country are full of asphalt. They are absorbing heat. They're just concrete islands that are in the middle of neighborhoods, and they are the reason. Some of them can be a reason for why our neighborhood is so hot. They're absorbing heat and emitting it, and they have no trees. But they have so much land. In almost every community, schools are the largest landowner in any city, that they can be the solution to the very problem they're causing. They can be the lungs of a neighborhood that right now they're the microwave of that neighborhood. And so we are so committed to working with schools at every step of the way, not only because, as you saw, we have missions that are about planting trees, but also about education and student engagement. That all comes into a focal point at a schoolyard. And so our dream is to work with every single school campus in the peninsula, because that really is the solution to greening our dense urban matrix right now. It is hard to plant trees where we are. That's why we work with every resident to plant trees one by one by one by one. But if we had schools as part of the solution of building forests and planting forests, that would accelerate our mission so much. So by the time we get let's say we want to plant at a school, we have to work with the principal. We have to work with the maintenance staff. We have to work with the parent community. We have to, if a school has an agreement, as in Mountain View has, an agreement with the city to maintain the open fields, we have to coordinate with the city to make sure that we're planting in a place that they're comfortable with. We have to make sure there's irrigation and long-term tree care for that tree, to make sure we're not planting a tree in a place where it's going to fail. Once we have determined all of that, and I probably missed a few things, then we can get to that tree planting. So my point is that by the time you get to that tree planting, there will have been so much work done, so much community building done, so many partnerships done, so many friends made. We're trying to plant trees in a school in Mountain View, and I have met city officials I had never heard of before, thanks to this project. So it takes a lot, but it's worth it, because at the end of the day, all these people came together and agreed on something. And that's, I think, what we need right now.
Thank you. And I was also thinking a little bit more about what the actual morning of a tree planting event is
I
like.
can do that too. Sorry,
The mass of people assembled, how they're broken up into groups with the ages and things like that. Just to get a feel for what it's like to experience it.
I talked about the politics. Actually, you could talk about the actual.
It was all good.
So the morning of, in Canopy's case, in our events, depending on what kind of event it is, Canopy staff will arrive 30 minutes to an hour early to make sure that tools, tables are set up. And this is just so that we can welcome our volunteers who either show up early or show up on time. Indira, our volunteer engagement manager, will check in all the volunteers as well as our planting leaders. And these are super volunteers who have spent hours and hours learning how to plant with Canopy and are confident and experienced enough to guide other volunteers to plant a tree. Once all the volunteers have amassed and we've reached critical mass, then we do our introduction. We talk about what the plan is for the day, and all the volunteers get broken up into groups of 3 to 4, depending on the overall number of volunteers, because that is what we have determined to be the maximum for volunteers, to be the maximum number of volunteers to plant a single tree. Simply because of the weight of the tree, the size, the amount of work that it takes. And just to plant a single tree would take at least 2 hours. And that's if the soil is really nice. But otherwise, that's kind of the gist of it. After the after the planting itself is done, photo opportunities happen throughout the day. Canopy staff will be going around to each planting location to make sure that volunteers have everything they need and are taking the appropriate amount of breaks and safety concerns. And then when they leave, they are given some swag, and then they can be on their way. Or sometimes they will stay and help to see the behind the scenes, like loading things back up, loading up all the tools, and what we do to take care of a tree afterwards. So we always make sure that the tree planting, start from finish, is very much volunteer engaged.
Great, thanks for providing some color to that. Shani, did you have?
I have questions and comments. My first question is, what are the tree care questions that you get most frequently?
Watering is a big one, is how much do you water? And we always say 15 gallons for the first 3 years. 15 gallons once per week for the first 3 years, and that's to promote deep root growth. And after that, we ask residents, who we call tree stewards, about the health of their tree every year. See if they either have someone that they hire to take care of the trees that have been planted, or if they're doing it themselves, or we ask them, what do they need from us? Sometimes we'll also get, the stakes that were included with the trees have either fallen over, please come check it out.
So this is for trees that you planted. Do you get questions about trees that are just in people's yards and you did not plant?
Yes, we do get trees. We do get tree questions regarding like large mature trees that weren't planted by Canopy. While Canopy doesn't have the facilities or the equipment to care for large trees past the 5-year mark, we do have our arborist list that we do send to these residents or to anyone who needs tree care help. This arborist list includes a list of arborists of varying specialties, and they can specialize in asking these. A lot of the time, the questions regarding mature trees is going to be whether or not they're going to fall over because it's really windy, especially since for the last 3 years, we've had some intense windstorms for small periods of time. But even one windstorm can kind of make or break a tree. A lot of it comes down to how to best care for the tree once a windstorm, or to prevent a tree from coming down during a windstorm.
Do you have any specific directions on how to water oak trees, mature oak trees, anything like that?
That actually depends more on the type of oak tree. So for example, our Coast Live oak, don't water it in the summer once it's mature, and actually just don't water it at all and allow nature to water it in the winter, because it's accustomed to our wet and cold winters and hot and dry summers.
So do you provide this information to people?
We
And
do.
on winters that we have no rain, do you tell people that maybe they should water during the winter if there was, 3 months of no rain?
Yes, we do. We do have our annual campaign of during drought season to still water your trees, because trees are actually going to be your best bet at preventing future drought, as it does provide shade and doesn't add to the heat island effect. But in general, we try to look at things more from like an individual tree species list. Certain oaks, for example, do need more water than others. California oaks are just a very small microcosm of oaks around the world, and a small amount of oaks that we do plant in Palo Alto. But each tree has its own, once they're mature, they each have their own criteria, and our tree library does actually have a list of trees and its watering requirements and care requirements. And that is something that all residents, anyone who goes to our website can find.
Okay, thank you.
We also do have specific pages on watering instructions for mature trees.
I was hoping for a really proactive explanation to people on how to take care of native oaks. I mean, you have a lot of materials that people can find, and that's great. But I think that our locally native oaks are really, really important, and people don't know how to take care of them. And what we see often now is that somebody will come and redo their landscaping, and before you know it, that whole landscape becomes impermeable or whatever. So I think that taking care of oaks is a really important thing, and it would be lovely if you actually had specific instructions for people for their native oaks. Can you tell me what species of plants? You said you're planting 48 already planted out of 120 that is planned soon. What species do you plant, and how many of these, or like what percentage is locally native trees? And of these, how many are locally native oaks?
That's a great question, and I can't think of the numbers right off the top of my head. However, I can say that the most common oaks that we do plant are going to be the valley oak. In terms of locally native oaks would be the valley oak and the coast live oak. However, we do broaden the palette as well, since not all of our locally native plants can be considered trees. It really also depends on the residence's site and very specific criteria, whether or not there's a lot of shade or a lot of sunlight or a lot of space to begin with. This year, I have put more of an emphasis on offering locally native tree species, and so far I do have a growing percentage of residents who are interested in getting locally native species like Sambucus nigra, which is the blue elderberry, the Prunus ilicifolia, the local cherry. And we do try to focus a lot more on trees or species that can become trees, and are locally available at the nurseries in a tree form, as our mission is to provide trees and shade to as many places that need it as possible. Unfortunately, and I say this with as much love for native plants and our locally native plants as possible, many of California's, as a whole, many of our local or our California native trees are not suitable for urban spaces. So we are working with a limited palette, but I would say the most popular trees that we plant are going to be toyons, Cerces occidentalis, the western redbud, which is locally native, ceanothus. We do choose a tree variety, the Ray Hartman, which may not necessarily be locally native, as it is a nursery variety, but it is based off of a locally native shrub. The cherry, like I mentioned, and our locally native oaks.
But you don't have like numbers of how many of the plants that you do plant are actually native, locally native species?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay, so my next comment, the Palo Alto Urban Forest Master Plan, goal number 2, regenerate native woodland and riparian landscapes as the key ecological basis of the urban forest with focus on native species and habitats. This is our urban forest master plan. We know that we're losing biodiversity at an unprecedented rate since the great extinction 60 million years ago. And we also know that there's a very, very tight connection between local species of plants and the animals that eat them and the animals that eat the animals that eat them. So the basic of the food chain is the plants that we use. And so local species of pollinators require the local native species, not even the varieties of them, the local native species. And the bugs feed the birds, and the birds feed their chicks, etc. So this is really important, and I wonder if you provide any education about biodiversity in general, habitat value of the different trees. And I've seen that some of the materials that are provided in the manual, but there seem to be in your database. Like if I search for a tree and I want to look at habitat value, I can potentially find what it does, but I don't know if you actually have education to all these high school students about the value of local native plants, about what does it mean to clean all the leaves under the trees so there's nowhere for the caterpillars to evolve, all the biological ecosystems that we all depend on. And eventually, climate change and droughts and all these other things are degrading our ecosystem, and planting things like ginkgos degrade them just as much. I mean, they provide a little aesthetic value, that's nice, and they provide some shade, but they provide almost plastic value as far as biodiversity. So I was wondering if you have any education to children and adults about the value and about how to plant and why select native trees. And just as a side comment, I don't know that we can really generalize that so many of our local species are not good for urban environments. I just don't see it that way. I think native trees can belong everywhere. And you can shape them to be if they're bushy. But anyway, so I'd like to know more about the education about habitat value and biodiversity.
Sure, thank you for your question. We share your concern. We're aligned with you. When Ebony or any of our community forestry coordinators go into a person's home because they've said they want a tree, we try to share all those values with that resident. But the reality is that we need everyone's partnership in making sure that a tree survives. And so if a resident does not want the tree that is native to this area prehistorically, then we have two choices. We either say they can't have a tree, or we have to provide them with a tree that is climate resilient, appropriate to this environment, and climate adaptive. That's something that I think we have to accept. The climate has changed. It has changed. And that means that there are trees that used to survive here 100 years ago that are struggling now. And we have to think ahead about what trees are going to be able to survive the unpredictability of the future. And so the reason why ginkgos, for example, you brought up ginkgos, are part of our palette is because they are resilient. They will provide shade, and they provide some values to people that will protect us from the heat and from the droughts that are incoming. The ginkgos are one of the trees that have survived Hiroshima. So that's why they're part of our palette. That's an example. I'm just bringing that up. But to your point, We do try as best as we can to educate people on the value of native trees and what they bring as biodiversity and what they do to our environment. And we have to, we try our best to try to convince people to accept one of those trees. But again, the realities of living in an urban setting not only means that, yes, city trees don't do as well. The soils are different. You know, what is, one of our urban forestry advisors says, name me a native tree that is native to a parking lot. They're difficult. It's a different place. The soils are different. At the end of the day, we need partnerships of communities to accept trees and love them. And sometimes they don't want that native oak. But we definitely have, all of our trees are approved by the city, are required by the city. There's no tree that is outside of that list. And again, they are appropriate to the realities of today.
Thank you.
So I think we're touching on some discussions that are not going to get solved at this meeting this evening, but a lot of it will segue well into our next agenda item. Something that I think about from the last discussion is, and it also ties in with the urban forestry item. The city has a list of protected tree species, and it might be worthwhile to look at what the specific instructions are between what Canopy has and what is on the city website in terms of the care guidelines for the protected species, and that includes the 4 native oaks and 3 other trees. So that's something that I think our urban forester Peter Gollinger, who we'll hear from soon, could probably look into. And I know Canopy, of course, works very closely together with the urban forestry department and figure out what is the right way to, what is the best way to have this information available to and discoverable for our local community. Another one question I had is, and you've touched on it a bit, and I appreciate, JP, I appreciate what you said about pushing the issue. We'll plant any tree for anybody, anytime. To paraphrase, sounds like a little bit like Earl Scheib and his car painting, but we're not going to go there. But in terms of the South Palo Alto Tree Initiative, maybe you could talk a little bit more about that. And this is something that directly relates to our community, but working to improve the canopy coverage in South Palo Alto. It's kind of, it's inherently more difficult because the lot sizes are smaller, and so there's less potential area on a lot that can accommodate a tree. And so obviously working uphill against that, but it's great to hear you talk about how you plant a tree in the front yard, plant the tree in the backyard. It's not just city trees or trees on city right of way. And just talk a little bit about, if somebody is looking for a tree, what do they do?
Yeah, you do it.
So I've been working in the I've been working on the South Palo Tree Initiative for the past 3 planting. This is my 3rd planting season. It is a long-standing project that I inherited, and it is essentially a self-sustaining project in a way, because Canopy is so well known in the South Palo Alto communities that they come to us on their own. And so we're always actually looking at a wait list of people wanting more trees. We don't technically have a limit on how many trees can be planted on one property. And we do try to find the best trees that will suit the, whether it's a narrow spot or a large spot. If it's a large spot, we do opt for example, like one of the native oaks, or even just a native tree. But sometimes a lot of residents in the South Palo Alto neighborhood, they came from other parts of the world. And so they do love other tree species as well. But before I go off topic, so they reach out to us requesting a tree. I, as the community forestry coordinator, will go out and meet them at their residence or wherever it is that they want a tree. From there, we discuss where the tree will go, what they desire in a tree, what is the purpose of the tree, if it's for shade, if it's to shield the side of their house and protect it from sunlight, if it's even simply just to protect from the sound barrier of, say, they're right next to the Caltrain line. We take those into consideration, and then personal preferences as well as site conditions. How much sun is there? How much shade is there? How much, whether it's lawn or just straight up dirt. From there, then I go back and I give them a shortlisted suggestion that takes all of those into account, as well as maybe some additional ones that they may not have thought of. I do always try to sneak in a native here or there. Ultimately, it is up to the resident to decide what tree they will love and what tree they are willing to take care of for the long term. And we do emphasize that we will care for that tree. As part of our promise to these trees is that we have a team dedicated to taking care of trees for the next three-ish years. And that's just to make sure that these trees are getting the best care at the youngest age possible. And once they're mature, it's a little harder to get there. You're not supposed to work as much on a mature tree as you would on a young tree. I liken it a lot to the growth of a human child. But essentially, in a nutshell, that is once I've sent out that suggestion, residents will come back to me with their final choices, first and second choice, and that is based on nursery availability as well. If I'm able to get the tree that they desire, then we can work on a planting date. And that planting date depends on kind of whether or not they can be put into a larger community planting, or if they're so far away from other houses, then we get volunteers to work on it on an off Wednesday or Thursday. But regardless, once a resident has confirmed what tree species they want, that is when I can move forward and go ahead with the planting. But that is essentially the purpose of it.
Thank you. Last question is, what can we do to help?
What can we do to help?
What can we do to help?
That's a loaded question.
All you have to do is say yes. If you have space and the will and the love, and you live south of Palo Alto, south of the Oregon Expressway, all you have to do is say yes, we'll do the rest. Or if you don't, and you still want to be part of this movement, then look at our website, go to our calendar, and there's always something to do.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay.
Could I just?
I'm sorry, yes.
That's all right. Could I just add my thanks to Canopy for everything that you guys do? And it was so nice to sit here and be inspired tonight. We haven't been inspired a lot lately, and this is really great to hear your presentation. Personally, I wanted to say that I have a picture of a tree right here on my phone that was planted in my yard in 2010. In honor of my husband who had passed away, and it has grown. Canopy has taken care of it, and it is absolutely beautiful right now. And I'm sorry I can't ship it to you so that everybody could see it. I also wanted to add that I have been involved with Canopy in East Palo Alto and our field, the Rich May field. We lost a huge, beautiful, I don't know what kind of oak, but a beautiful oak 2.5 years ago in the storm. And I called Canopy, and you guys came out and planted 6 trees. We managed to source 75 volunteers from our kids who play on the field. And the best part about that, with all of the vests and the tools and the planting and the learning and all of that, was a young man who was a teenager who came running over to one of the coordinators and said, "I just planted a tree and it was the best thing ever." So thank you so much for everything that you do. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's move on to our next item, which is our annual urban forestry annual report and a discussion of the draft tree and landscape technical manual. We have Peter Gollinger, our urban forester.
Good evening, and just personally, I wanted to say thank you to Canopy for all the support that they provide to the urban forestry section, and we'll hopefully talk about that a little bit in our annual update here. Good evening, commissioners. I'm here tonight to provide you with the annual urban forestry update on the urban forestry section of the city. So for those of you who don't know, you can, next slide. The urban forestry group operates as a section within the public services division of public works. So that's how we're organized within the city. Next slide, please. Some of the things that our section is responsible for is we manage the maintenance of all the public trees. This includes all the street trees planted in the public right-of-way and all the trees around city buildings and on city parks. We remove and replace public trees as needed. We respond to calls for service related to down trees and down tree limbs. This includes private trees that may fall into the street. We still come clear the street, make it safe for the public. We manage the clearance of vegetation from utility infrastructure because, as you know, the city operates its own electric utility, which is unusual. So we do all things trees. We also review development plans for compliance with city tree policies and the tree ordinance. We review development plans for compliance with the Model Water Efficiency Landscape Ordinance. And we respond to residents' calls about public trees. Next slide, please. We are currently funded for 17 full-time employees. We have 2 vacancies currently due to retirements. So we'll need to update this picture for next year. We had 2 longtime employees who were our inspectors for our tree contractors retire. And those positions were filled through an open recruitment through promotion. So we now have 2 vacancies for tree trimmer, which we are currently recruiting for. We have 3 project managers, a landscape architect, and a building planning technician that help us manage all of this. Next slide, please. So this is what we maintain. We maintain just under 40,000 public trees, which we have inventoried, and we maintain probably more than 30,000 private trees for line clearance. That's a little more nebulous because some years we prune more than others. Next slide, please. One of the keys for us to keep our section running properly is staff development. We have a lot of folks that are certified as either ISA certified arborists or specialty tree climbers or tree risk assessment qualified. We even have a board certified master arborist and a couple of municipal specialists, which are now called urban forestry professionals. And we have several staff members that are scheduled to take exams in 2025. Next slide, please. So this is always one of the most fun slides. So this is kind of just the data by the numbers. We average more than 150 monthly calls. It's probably higher than that if you include everyone, but these are kind of the calls that get logged into our main number. We perform over 900 inspections of city trees each year. These are the documented inspections. We do over about 500 tree protection inspections for tree fencing on development projects. In 2024, we did 837 development reviews. We had 252 limb pickups, which is back to about normal. If you look at the historical average, it's between 250 and 300. We had 450 in 2023 with those big windstorms. So that was a dramatic uptick, but now the last 2 years have been about normal. We had a higher than normal year for electric line clearance. We trimmed over 8,000 trees. And for public trees, we pruned about 5,000, which is about normal. And in partnership with Canopy, we planted about 300 trees. Next slide. So some of our key accomplishments for fiscal 24. As you probably are aware, because I think that's the last time I was here, we were talking about the updates to the tree ordinance which council passed in 2024, the final additional modifications. We've been participating, our urban forestry group, with the Santa Clara Valley Urban Forestry Alliance. So this is an organization of urban foresters, municipal urban foresters throughout Santa Clara County. It's been mostly championed by the Office of Sustainability with the county. And they are applying for grant money to fund regional projects to increase canopy all across the county. So it's an excellent tool that's it's slowly advancing. One of the newer ones is the Peninsula Municipal Foresters Cooperative, which is just kind of getting started, and that's going up the peninsula towards the city. Part of the ordinance update that happened in 24 was updating the administrative penalties for violations to the tree protection ordinance to put it in line with the ordinance text. And as we're going to talk about next, we completed the draft of the Tree and Landscape Technical Manual. And we also participated in the Bay Area Invasive Shot Hole Borer Working Group, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. Next slide, please. For those of you who have seen me or my predecessor present an annual report before, you'll be very familiar with this graph. This is our program outputs that tracks some of the key data for us, including number of trees planted, tree removals, development reviews, trees pruned, etc. I'm happy to answer questions about that later, but we'll skip to the next slide. This is in regards to the street trees pruned per year. And this basically displays what our return cycle is. So our target is that green line. Ideally, we want to be at every tree every 7 years for a major prune. And we've been at that level pretty consistently since 2020. Next slide, please. So some of the challenges we have is the big one that nobody's really talking about is invasive shot hole borer, previously known as the polyphagous shot hole borer, has been confirmed in San Jose. We're still determining its distribution, but it's rapidly expanding. It's pretty much in an area starting at the municipal golf course. There's also been a confirmed testing sighting in Redwood Shores. And this particular pest attacks urban trees and is very deadly. There's several species that it will kill, and there's other species that it will just damage. It killed a lot of trees in Southern California about 10 years ago, and so we know a lot about it, but there's pretty much no stopping it once it gets established. So it's something that we're preparing for. We've created a matrix for treatment, so we know what levels we need to treat or remove trees for, and we're working on that with city management so that we're prepared when it does come here. We expect it's probably a year or two away, but any day somebody could find one. So we could do a whole presentation on that, but we'll save that for another time. But it's just something that we're looking ahead. It's one of our future challenges. We also talked about the recruitment for the retirements. And one of the difficulties we've seen is trying to implement the new ordinance without the supporting document of the Tree and Landscape Technical Manual. So speaking of that, we'll go to the next slide. So the second half of this presentation is a brief discussion about this wonderful draft. So this is the original document that was crafted by Mr. Dave Doctor, former city arborist, and it was last published in, I believe, we're going to talk about that next slide. Oh, you already got it up there. So we'll get to that. So what is the Tree and Landscape Technical Manual? So the Tree Protection Ordinance, Title 8 of Municipal Code, calls for the creation of the Tree and Landscape Technical Manual to provide details on items in the ordinance, such as protection of trees during construction, replacement, how to replace removed protected trees, maintenance of protected trees, formats of arborist reports. Basically, it is the meat to the details in the ordinance. Next slide, please. So as mentioned, the original Tree Technical Manual was first published in 2001. The final printing was in 2016. And this document became a model for other agencies to use as far as how to protect trees during construction in a municipal setting. One of the other things that happened in 2016 was the city adopted the state model water efficiency landscape ordinance, which has a lot of regulations regarding water efficiency and landscape. We don't have any documentation or policy documents to support that. So we started studying how to update the tree technical manual. Contract was awarded to Hort Science, which is now Bartlett Hort Science. They're a horticultural consulting firm here in the Bay Area, and they drafted a phenomenal draft for us, but it was based on our old ordinance. So once we determined that the need to update the ordinance was there, we had to go and revamp, put that on hold until the ordinance was updated, and then we could continue with updating the tree and landscape technical manual. So finally in 2024, the final changes to the tree ordinance were passed by council, and so we hit the ground running trying to get this manual completed. Next slide, please. So some of the major changes from the original tree technical manual are we've changed tree replacement calculations to try and encourage larger canopied species. This is to kind of close the loophole of folks planting a lot of small species because they could get more trees on the property. So if they planted a whole bunch of crepe myrtles or a whole bunch of western redbuds, they would get the same credit, but we'd have a much smaller canopy. So we've changed the calculations so that you get larger credit for larger canopied species. We've also gone to the use of automated online forms for submission of project arbor certifications and monthly inspection reports. This is to make it easier on the arborist to submit it to us, make sure that we get it, and it doesn't slip through the cracks. We've also made major updates to the T1 plan sheet set, which is the tree disclosure statement and standard conditions that's included in every development plan. Next slide, please. Some of the newer components are primarily related to landscape, but we've also included the new designated arborist system, the technical information on landscapes, details on how to comply with the MWELO, incorporation of new city policy documents such as the sustainability plan and the saltwater intrusion and climate action plan. We have all these wonderful new plans that are focused on city policy that weren't included in the original tree technical manual. So we need to make sure we include those. We've also expanded details on tree removal as part of development projects. Next slide, please. So some of the early feedback, we released the initial draft in December. We sent out a mass email to arborists and tree care workers to try and get some feedback from those folks. We put it on the website, and we've just been trying to talk it up and get some feedback. And so some of the things that we've found are lacking is we didn't include groundwater rise or saltwater intrusion in the site analysis portion. So we're going to make sure we include that. One of the recommendation was find ways to further prioritize native trees and plants. I think not only in replacements, but also in just general site selection and plant selection. Consider adding a list of acronyms to the forward materials. One useful suggestion came through, I guess this also is in use in Menlo Park, part of the designated arborist list. There are some folks that specialize in level 3 risk assessment techniques, which would be things like ground penetrating radar or trunk radar or tensometer readings where they can measure the thickness of the actual sound wood in a tree. And not every arborist can do this, but those arborists are pretty specialized. So they may not want to be a project arborist and follow a project all the way through, but they need to be able to submit these special risk reports. So we've created a special category for those folks. There was a recommendation to include maybe some additional flow charts and expand the pest management section to include some other pests that are on the horizon that we may see. Next slide, please. So how do you or how does the public provide feedback? So we have the draft manual available and a form available on our city website. It's on the tree ordinance update page. It's linked in this presentation, and it is linked on the front page of the tree group. So if you just search tree ordinance, you'll get the tree ordinance update page or the tree ordinance information page. In fact, I think that probably should be tree ordinance information. I think I did that wrong, but we'll make sure that it's linked on both pages. We have an online form where you can submit a comment, or you can upload a comment document, or you can just email it directly to us at trees@City of Palo Alto. Currently, the public comment period is set to close on March 3rd. However, since we're having this meeting this late in the month, I'm probably going to extend that deadline for a week or two to allow anyone who's watching this meeting or sees the recording an opportunity to submit comments. Staff comments from other departments are due at the end of March. So starting in April, we're going to be going through and incorporating all the changes as we move forward. And that's all I have for you this evening for the presentation, but I'm happy to answer questions or dive into details as you see fit. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter, for the update. I will note that the Parks and Rec Commission has been designated in the municipal code along with the major changes to the tree ordinance in 2023 as the official community forum for the urban forestry section. And so this is something that we look to do on an annual basis. It's an opportunity for the community to hear and provide feedback on what's happening. And as far as the meeting tonight and the feedback from the commission, I think we can look to focus our comments in two ways. One, just general comments about the urban forestry program, and two, anything specific regarding the tree and landscape technical manual, or the TLTM, in line with what Peter has reviewed. So the same thing applies to public comment. I think we have some hands raised externally and a speaker on site in the chambers with us. So let's go to public comment unless there's any qualifying questions from commission members.
We have a total of 3 public comments. The first one will be from Winter D.
Winter Dellenbach. I'm delighted to be here tonight. I love seeing Canopy here. They always make me feel better. I'm here to talk about the Tree Landscape and Technical Manual, known as the TLTM. I was lucky enough to be invited to comment on it, so I've pored over it in more detail than I was prepared to do at first. And while it's largely done, there will be some tweaks yet to be made. I mean, it is a draft to the content and organization of the manual. This is the first update in almost 25 years of this manual, and it badly needs this update. It's absolutely vital to support our tree ordinances and our urban forests, our guidelines, and practices for our modern day landscaping and tree needs. I'm glad that our urban forester, Peter Gollinger, is here. We couldn't have a more knowledgeable person in this position. We're very lucky to have him. The TLTM serves a vital role in providing information to residents, tree service professionals, landscape architects, developers, and arborists about plants and trees in our city, so we all may live and work compatibly with our urban forest. Within the draft manual, there is a wide range of helpful landscape and tree topics, including such things as the definition of terms and ordinances. But my favorite is it has the soil requirements for various plantings. This is very much a practical manual. It's not pie in the sky. This is what it is. This is how you do it. This is how you accomplish it. This will work. This won't work. It addresses removing, replacing, and maintaining new trees, how to water trees during a drought, tree and landscape permits, lists of low-water landscape plants, including natives, which I think may be added to, fire-safe landscapes for Palo Alto lands east of 280. How about that? Fire-safe landscapes for Palo Alto lands west of 280, and so much more. There will be many convenient live links to with an array of relevant resources, enabling a user to quickly access wanted information that they need. Overall, the TLTM provides practical, down-to-earth content that supports our urban forest and landscaping to everyone's benefit. We soon will have a revised manual worthy of Palo Alto and our urban forest and landscaping, and I look forward to that. Thank you so much, and thank you for being on this commission. You make Palo Alto better.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Dashil L.
Hello again. My name is Dasha Leeds, Conservation Coordinator for the Sierra Club Loma Prieta chapter. As was brought up earlier tonight, the Urban Forest Master Plan Goal Number 2 states regenerated native woodland and riparian landscapes as the key ecological basis of the urban forest, with focus on native species and habitat. We believe that the draft tree and landscape technical manual, as currently written, needs some work to meet this goal. We hope to see more attention to ecology and biodiversity in the document. Currently, the habitat value of trees are not analyzed as part of the tree selection criteria used in this manual. For example, the right tree in the right place principles do not include habitat value or recommendations for native plants specifically. We are glad to hear from the staff presentation today that staff does plan on adding more of an emphasis on native plants. We too would like to see more information on native plants in this document. Having read through the manual myself and the corresponding references back into the municipal code, it's still relatively unclear which native species should be prioritized when planting, as well as where those species should be planted. Overall, the discussion of native plants and riparian ecosystems should be expanded, and we're glad to hear that staff is planning on doing so. Regarding that, the Mountain View North Bayshore Precise Plant palette may be useful as a model for how to direct the right kinds of plantings for enhancing ecological value and biodiversity. Thanks for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Doria Suma.
Good evening, and thank you for letting me speak tonight. I'm a member of the Planning and Transportation Commission, but I'm just speaking for myself. Thank you to the Parks and Rec Commission to allow speaking tonight, and I really appreciate the emphasis on our urban forests this evening. I want to thank Public Works and most specifically the Urban Forestry Department for their commitment to maintaining and growing our urban canopy. And I have reviewed the TLTM, which is a big subject, though I'm not an arborist or landscape professional, but I'm very excited to see this brought forward again. This is a very important document that will implement our tree ordinance and provide a framework and valuable information for landscape professionals, arborists, and property owners, and should really help achieve our goals with regards to growing our canopy, providing essential habitat for biodiversity, numerous environmental benefits, plus shade, cooling, and beauty in our community. So thank you very much for all of this. And I also appreciate that Canopy was included on the same evening, and always a fan of Canopy's efforts in the community to make Palo Alto a better place. And I think the suggestions on slide 17, which are responses from our Urban Forestry Department to early suggestions, sound really good, and also with perhaps an expanded emphasis on native species. So thank you very much for this opportunity. Good evening.
Thank you to the members of the public who commented for us this evening. Appreciate it. Now we'll go to the commission for their comments and questions. Anyone like to start?
Yeah, I just had a quick question about how many people take advantage of the opportunity to communicate with you all on the online forums, and how many people do we hear about?
So most of the arborist online forums are not live yet. We've had arborists test them because we're waiting for this document to go live. So we've done the prep work and we've had actual field arborists who normally submit reports for us, test them out and give us feedback and say this works, this doesn't work. One of the things we noticed is that while the comments and conditions in a development plan may require a project arborist, oftentimes the applicant isn't actually contracting with an arborist to be the project arborist. So that's kind of slipping through the cracks. So that's one of the reasons why we're doing this. We're trying to close some of those gaps. As far as the feedback from the public, I would say regarding the tree and landscape technical manual, we've probably received 10 or 12 comments via the forum and probably more than that just via email. So it's probably like 20 comments via email from people. Some are large documents with lots of comments, including some very articulate and fantastic comments from Canopy, which we're very grateful for. They caught some things that we didn't see, so that's excellent. But it's about 50-50, just direct email or using the form.
Thank you.
Excuse me, was there another member of the public with their hand up that didn't get a chance to speak?
Yes, we have one more person.
Let's go ahead and back up to add public comment. Thank you.
Okay, Karen Holman.
Good evening and thank you. And thank you to Peter and Urban Forestry and you all for what you're doing to protect and enhance our urban forest. Palo Alto's commitment to trees goes back to at least the early part of last century, at least. I agree with the comments of what other speakers had mentioned. I also want to bring up something else too, which may be beyond the scope of the TLTM, at least in its best and fullest application, but I wanted to bring up the topic of artificial turf. It needs a significant mention, but also understand that it may take an ordinance to adopt a policy about this. But people in trying to do the right thing, and I think most people really do want to do the right thing, are at times doing harm but not knowing it. The underlay for artificial turf can sometimes be impermeable and not support plants that can provide both cooling as well as habitat for animals and critters that are really critical to our ecosystem. So I hope you all will at least give some attention to this evening. And I'm sorry it's such a late evening to get this going, but do the best you can, and know you will. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and continue then with commissioner comments. Anne? Yep, Shawnee?
Okay, thank you. I'll try to go through a few questions about the program first and suggestions. You have data on how many trees are removed. Does that include projects that don't go through the entire permitting process, like SB 330, builders remedy projects, and ADUs and things like that? Is that included?
So those trees listed are just public trees. That's
only public
that's
trees.
only public
so
trees.
So do you know how many private trees we're losing?
So we've begun tracking those as of about a year ago. We haven't compiled any comprehensive data, but it is something that we plan to start reporting on annually. We're still working out the kinks and how to record those because there's so many different application types that go through development review, and how do we capture those without without having to go through each individual application as it comes through and mark it all down in a spreadsheet. We're working on trying to figure that out. We've started collecting it in, what we've done is we've started populating tree permits for removals on development projects, but there are no fee permits. It's just a record keeping thing. And so we're getting better at having that be part of our actual process. So we'll have records for that going forward.
Okay, I'd be very interested in the results of that to see, what is the trend, because we have Canopy come and tell us, oh, we're planting trees, people are asking for trees, but we're also losing a lot of trees.
Well, and each one of those projects is also required to plant trees as well. So the dilemma we have is a lot of those are on private property as private trees. And so we're kind of limited in our ability to monitor those long-term. Like we can make sure that they're planted as part of the development project, but after that, they're pretty much on their own. And so it's difficult for us to try and track that long-term. But this was a concern when we did update the ordinance. And so we've been trying to capture accurate data on this. And I think we've got a method now. And so we just need to get some time under our belt so we can come back with some good numbers.
Thank you. Interesting.
Sorry, just to clarify. So you currently don't have numbers on private property trees that are removed?
So we're starting to gather that. I don't know if the data we have is complete. So what we've implemented is a behind the scenes process where when one of our staff is reviewing a project with a protected tree removal, then we behind the scenes make a tree permit. So we have a record for that in our, so basically there's so many different types of permits, but most projects have an actual building permit, a BLD permit is in their code. Public Works issues tree permits for tree removals, for protected tree removals, but we only issue those for stuff outside of development. So when a person wants to remove a protected tree on their property with no other project going on, they would get a tree permit from us. So what we've started doing is recording tree removals as part of building permits in the back end. So we have that data. So they're not actually getting a tree permit, but we're recording it in our system that way. So we have data. The problem is we haven't done that for every project over the last year. We're just starting to get into the habit of doing that. So as we go forward, we're going to have better data on the protected trees that were removed as part of development projects.
So you will have both the trees that received permit just because somebody wanted to remove a tree and the ones that are part of some kind of development, whether it's an ADU or a new house. Correct. Or a new.
So right now we have all the tree permit data for trees removed outside of development that under the permit process, we can pull that data now. Okay. What we don't have easy access to is trees that were removed as part of a project.
Yeah, got it.
Which we're working to resolve so we have that easily accessible.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned staff development, and I think that's really, really important. I'm looking to see that this staff will also have some development in ecology, native species. I don't know who exactly provides that kind of education. I know Doug Talamy does these talks. They're only 2 hours or something, but they're really, really informative about the ecological connections of trees and the local ecosystems. And so I think that kind of training is really, really needed. I know that I'm sure they're great arborists and they do all the right training for that, but the ecology piece, please add that to the requirements or whatever you can do to see that people will also get that part of the picture when they train about trees. Another thing is I'm glad you're including groundwater in the data that people and saltwater intrusion. Do you know where we have saltwater intrusion now?
So I don't know if they've measured any definitive. I know they have it mapped where it's most likely to occur based on groundwater intrusion due to sea level rise. I know they've done a lot of work on that and they've modeled it, but I don't know if there's any actual data of any intrusion currently. Okay.
I think it's important to know where the groundwater is because some trees that we assume that they will need high water, need irrigation, they may not. We have trees in our yard that we never irrigate and they're doing great. So I think that we need to consider that where we have high groundwater, there may be a little more flexibility in what kind of tree you can plant. And you don't have to only do very drought tolerant, plant if they have water in the ground and they can thrive on that. Let me see. When trees die naturally or break or whatever, like 2 trees died at Ramos Park, right? How does that get calculated into a tree replacement requirement of some sort if the tree just simply died? Or does it have to be actually removed?
So the replacement, are you talking about like on a commercial property or a residential property or?
Let's try all of the above, commercial, residential, and city owned.
So if a protected status tree dies, we would only have a requirement for replacement if they were letting us know that they're removing and replacing. So generally for commercial properties, it's part of a landscape plan. And so they would need to submit a replacement because it was part of an approved landscape plan. If it's in the open space, unless it's a hazard to a trail or a road, they're going to leave it alone. Or if it's a fire hazard, otherwise it's, it depends on the location. If it's a city's tree, we're going to remove it as a hazard and replace it if possible.
So the trees that died at Ramos Park in the last few weeks, those will be replaced. I'm just trying to understand how that works.
In Ramos. 2 trees came down.
Oh, okay. Oh, from storm damage or fell over. Okay.
In the wind.
Gotcha. So if a resident or a property has a tree fall over from storm damage, they're not penalized. We would recommend replacement. If it's a commercial landscape, we may require a 1-to-1 to keep the landscape plan current, but we don't penalize folks for trees that fall over in a storm. So
and city trees?
City trees get replaced if there's not a conflict with utilities. So a lot of times what we're finding is trees that were planted 50 years ago were planted on top of utilities. And so when we go back to replace, we realize that's not an ideal location because it could impact sewer lines or gas lines. So oftentimes we have to move a tree slightly, or we may have to leave a spot vacant.
Okay, so just a side comment here. I don't think any of the trees that died at the golf course got replaced. So please note that they may need, there were a lot of trees over the past 10 years or more that died in the golf course. I think, did you want to have both issues discussed together or do one like this first and the manual after?
Either way, if you want to take a break and let others speak and get back to it, you can.
Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Ding?
Thanks, Peter, for your hard work and the great report. I just have a quick question. How many of the city staff are working on the TLTM for the next 3 months or 4 months?
So that would be mostly me. A couple of the project managers I'm going to assign portions to help with. And we do have a limited amount of funds available with the consultant, but it's mostly going to be for final copy editing, preparing for printing. So the heavy lifting will be done primarily by me and a couple of my staff members.
Thank you and good luck.
Thank you. I have some comments. I mean, overall, thank you for the presentation. It's always great to have you here for an update. And this is a community that was named after a tree, that values the trees. You play an important role in this community, and your work is appreciated. As far as the updates, or the annual update, question I had, there are 151 tree permits for protected tree removal or work on trees. Do you have a breakdown on how many were for removal versus how many were for just work?
I don't have that readily available, but we do issue permits for private citizens to work on city trees, generally in front of their homes. So for instance, if they feel they want a higher level of maintenance than the city would provide, or if they wanted to address a pest issue that we, under our current integrated pest management policy wouldn't address, we could allow them to treat the tree. I would say out of those, maybe 10 or less would be tree care permits. I think the average per year would be somewhere between 10 and 15. Again, I'd have to look it up to be confident, but that sounds about right.
Thanks. For future tracking, I think it'd be helpful to
separate
track them in a separate bucket, because there's a big difference between a permit
Correct.
for removal and a permit for doing some work on the tree.
And we were looking at that more as opposed to staff time, and that's not dramatically different for the two. So, but
right. I mean, because the big picture thing is when trees come out and then requirements for trees going back in, and I think that's really some important keys to focus data collection on, and the goal is to build up our urban canopy to get to the 40% level, and to get all the city in that bucket. And I think it's important to have some data to provide some metrics for how we're doing. Let's see. Overall, the tree and landscape technical manual, it's going to serve a really important role for the community. It's an important component of the city tree management and protection framework, and as you've mentioned, has been alluded to, the tree ordinance update from 2023 calls out things that are in this updated manual that isn't released yet, so it's not complete. So we really need to get this completed and out there. It's a huge document. It's a massive undertaking, and I agree with some comments that it could be some things to help the organization or discoverability of it will help. And we've talked about this a little bit. And one idea I think that would be helpful is adding some scenario examples. So when you're we're talking about going through the different permitting process to focus different information that gives an example of if you're a homeowner and you have a tree that needs to get removed, what is your process, and go through the flow chart steps, rather than just having a flow chart there for you to look at and trying to figure it out. And then similar process for individual home development or multi-family home development, and larger projects, so people can get a better feel for it. I did appreciate the comment about synthetic turf and its place in the tree and landscape technical manual. Obviously, the use of plastics and synthetic turf has been a hot topic locally and regionally. I think there is a real place for guidance and from the city, and not just guidance, but regulation in terms of how and where it's appropriate to be using synthetic turf for landscaping purposes, for individual homeowners, for multi-family home, for city projects as well. And I recognize that the TLTM is an extension of the Title 8 City Tree Ordinance, and so you can't go beyond the bounds of what's in Title 8. But I think it would be worth looking at getting feedback on what would make sense in terms of guidelines moving forward, and then talking about what changes to Title 8 ordinance would be required to provide the basis for updating this framework. Overall, I appreciate the comments from the public members, and I think you've got everything's on track, going in the right direction, and you're getting some good feedback, and look forward to getting this out, because we do really need this. So thank you. Bing.
Thanks, Vice Chair Greenfield. Thanks, Peter, for a great presentation, and it's really great to see the impressive numbers of amount of tree planted. Yeah, quick question regarding the education implementation, the new tree landscape technical manual. So, in addition to the online sessions, would you be also doing in-person workshops, say in the library, etc.? And how are you going to distribute those menus? How the resident know and to get a copy of them, especially if they do home development, ADUs getting very popular. And also with regarding the recent fire in Los Angeles, is there any additional information about fire prevention, etc. as well?
So part of the outreach, once this document is finalized and approved by the city manager, we will hold some workshops. I believe the intention was to hold both online and in person and post the recorded. I'd have to go back and double check, but I believe that's part of the outreach plan for this document once it's finalized. The document will be available prominently on the website for download as a PDF. We're also looking to secure budget to print some actual paper copies, much like Dave Doctor did with the original, and have it available for purchase at the development center. At a cost, not for just trying to cover the cost of printing. But our plan is to do some substantial outreach via, like I said, with the workshops, and try and get involved with some of the city newsletters, just get the word out. But until it's finalized, we don't really have detailed plans on that. Again, the plan is to get it done before the end of this fiscal year. So that's the priority at this point, and we're wanting to make sure we're not leaving anything out of the document and that we have all the bases covered. So if we do need to make edits in a year or two, they'll be minimal as opposed to a big overhaul. Because much like the original document, there will be times where we come back and need to make some tweaks. But if we can get the majority of the problems handled now, the better.
Fantastic. So so I found the Enjoy catalog, which our department is doing very good outreach, and sometimes they come with advertising such as Palato Adult School. If you could working with our staff using that vehicle, and that'd be also good outreach too, because each mailbox has a copy. Just a suggestion.
There has been some discussion in the past on the commission in terms of the use of the Enjoy catalog, and I'm not sure that what the guidelines were on that. It seemed like there was the city would, in terms of who pays for it and the fees, and then the availability for the city to use that for general promotion. But it'd be good to get some feedback from staff, just so the commission understands that how that tool could be used in the future for a variety of different applications.
We'll look into that.
Yeah, hopefully the great work you're doing can be reached to all our 65,000 residents, so they can make use of it. Thanks so much for the wonderful work.
Yeah, just one quick question, Peter, before Shawnee continues. Could you just comment on who is the TLTM written for? There's a lot of very technical information, obvious for landscaping and arborist professionals, but to what extent is it for the general public as well?
So the original tree technical manual was written for landscape and building professionals on how to preserve trees during construction projects. That's the fundamental purpose of the original document, in addition to supporting the original Title VIII. The new document is intended to follow in those footsteps, but also try and provide some information just for the general public and the general tree owner and the general landscape, the person who's getting ready to do their landscape. We wanted to include some best practices and things that can help you comply with all the various regulations regarding water efficiency. So the intention was to have a document that's focused on the professionals that are doing the installation work and during the construction work, but be accessible to the general public as well.
Thank you.
which is hard to do both, so.
Yes. Commissioner Clowns?
Thank you. So I want to add my voice to the plastic issue, I think, and I would look to explore in both the urban forest master plan and the ordinance, if there is a way to reduce the use of petroleum-based materials to cover the earth. That includes some of those plastic sheets that people put as barriers. I've seen them in the neighborhoods near me. People will cover their entire property with either concrete or these plastic barriers. And then they'll dig 3 holes in the plastic barrier and plant something in it, and then they cover it with gravel, and that's it. That's not landscaping. That is supporting any kind of life, really. So I don't know why we are allowing this kind of, sometimes they put mulch on top, that's better, but plastic and gravel as a landscape in Palo Alto seem to be a little odd. So, Jeff had suggestions and Commissioner, and I support that. And with Karen Holman. Regarding fire regulation, I think that's a moving target to try and capture here. And so I'm not sure how the city is going to address the new regulations that are coming, like 5 feet around every structure need to be cleared of any combustible materials. I don't even know that we can get there, and I don't know which areas of the city that might apply to. I don't think it's all decided yet, but that could have a huge impact on the urban forest, especially in the hills. And so I'm not sure you can capture it here. And some of those things that are dynamic these days, you may want to keep kind of placeholders as an update, but not necessarily as part of this document, because tomorrow it changes. The other thing about some of the examples that are, there is a table with what species of trees that you could find in Palo Alto would be this size. I think a lot of these things can be in like an appendix. Examples of things do not necessarily have to be in the body of the document, and that might make it a little easier to read, but I'll comment on that. The issue of biodiversity obviously is very, very important, and it's, as Mr. Leeds said, it's lacking. It really needs to be embedded everywhere, not just mentioned a few times into, yes, we have that goal, and so, yeah, that's the goal. And right now, it's really not there. It's not explored as to how we do it. And the suggestion of the species list from the North Bayshore Precise Plan, that species list includes a lot of different species, not only trees, but a lot of trees as well. And it includes all the information that you need about where to plant it. Is it shade tolerant? Is it tolerant of salt? Is it tolerant to, like, how much drought? Anyway, I think this would be a very good document to review, see which of those species can fit us. I think it's going to be very similar because, it's just the other side of the freeway here in Palo Alto where this was developed for. I think H.T. Harvey, a quite respected group, developed it. So please take a look at that and see if we can somehow incorporate that or a version of that or some of that. I'm not sure. Not all the species in that list are native. They all have some level of habitat value. A lot of them are actually not native. So these are some of the comments I have. And one of the things that I guess I need to look a little more in depth, and maybe you can explain a little bit, is, so the ordinance is to implement the urban forest master plan. Yeah, or like It's like, what is the relationship between those three documents?
So the tree protection ordinance it governs what trees are protected. It talks a lot about it's complicated because the tree ordinance came first and then the master plan happened. And then the ordinance was updated to more reflect the master plan. But fundamentally, the ordinance predated the master plan. So they're all interconnected. And I think that's one of the things we looked at during the ordinance update was what can we do to the ordinance that puts it more in line with the master plan? And so we incorporated some of those ideals from the master plan into the updated ordinance. Then this document is intended to help inform and fill in the regulations surrounding the municipal code in the ordinance. So they're intended to work together. And so your comments and the gentleman's comments from the Sierra Club about making sure that this document is following in line with the priorities from the master plan is well received. There is some room for improvement. I
Thank you.
acknowledge
No,
that.
this is helpful. Thank you so much. Trying to go through all that. Okay. I had one other question. I need to find it somewhere here.
Yeah, let's see if we can wrap this up.
This last question is just about the frequency of tree trimming, and this is just as a resident, my experience in my streets is that it seems like it's a lot more frequent that they come and trim the trees and that they keep lifting them, so they're becoming more taller and taller and taller, and I'm not sure that we need to cut the branches to the level that the tree keeps getting thinner and more like top heavy. So how do you decide when to go and trim some of the street trees?
A lot of that would depend on the species. Generally, we're scheduled to go through a geographic area every 5 to 7 years for a major prune. And then if we get a call for deadwood or we get a call that a limb fell, we would inspect the tree when we go out there. And if we see dead limbs on the interior, we would then remove them, which could then present the appearance that there's fewer branches when those limbs could have been shaded out. Again, it depends on the tree species too. A lot of times limbs are removed down low to facilitate vehicle access. So trash trucks or other vehicles in the roadway will have hit limbs that otherwise could stay, but now they've been damaged because they're interfering with the roadway. So oftentimes that can give the appearance of a overly lifted tree. But generally, unless we're called out for a specific maintenance issue, we're only there every 5 to 7 years to address, major maintenance pruning.
So if they come and it's 7 years and they see a tree that doesn't really have any trees, any branches that are dead or interfering with garbage trucks, then they just leave it alone? Because that's not what it looks like.
Yes and no. I mean, generally there's at least a small amount of maintenance work that is going to be needed because they're urban trees. They're not out in an open field where they can be left alone and only be addressed if there's a problem. Urban trees tend to interact more directly with their built environment. So there's often going to be a need for some variety of maintenance to prevent to increase visibility for signs, to increase visibility at corners, clearance for the electric lines, clearance for various other utility infrastructure. So it would be rare that they would go, yep, no, that one's good, completely. It happens, but there's usually going to be some small level of maintenance.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any comments from staff? Thanks so much, Peter.
Thank you. I appreciate the feedback.
Okay, it's getting late. Let's look to wrap this up. We're moving on to commissioner questions, comments, announcements, and future meetings and agendas. It used to be two different items. We get that all wrapped into one now. Okay. Anything you want to talk about? Any comments? Actually, I guess we didn't get ad hoc updates on here. If anybody has any ad hoc comments, they can include them now. That was the second item I was thinking about.
We could probably do that quickly.
Yep.
Just a quick thing.
Lightning round for ad hoc updates.
Yeah, about Coverly, Sarah talked a little bit about the progress with the visioning session. It looks like Commissioner Wang is going to be one of the fellows, right, Yudi?
Yeah, I submitted my application, waiting to hear
Good.
what's going next.
So I'm interested in the official role, if any, that the Parks and Recreation Commission will have with the Coverly development. I think we asked about that last time.
We tentatively have a Coverly update taking place at your upcoming April agenda.
Good,
So
'cause I think-
there will be, it's an iterative process, and therefore they will be coming back with updates frequently.
But I think it's important for the commission to have good communication with Concordia and with what's going on as we move forward. That's all. Just would be my comment. In terms of the courts and the pickleballs and the tennis situation, the ad hoc continues to meet and talk about different opportunities to extend the life of the tennis courts and the pickleball courts to move forward, make sure that everybody has their exercise and their opportunities. And the skate park is meeting with a group of the Skateport Park Advisory Committee next week. We've had a tough time getting people together because of Sam being in Colorado now. But there's a group of citizens who will be meeting with him, and we'll have an update next time. He continues to raise money, probably not as fast as he would like to raise money. And I think there's some interest in how that kind of unallocated budget item in the new finance report, if it has anything to do with the skate park, but I think we kind of think it does not, so. And then finally, is Peter Jensen still with Public Works?
No, Peter Jensen has left the city.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So Sarah, you're the staff person for the skate park, right? And in terms of the role that Peter was providing, the design piece, is there somebody who ultimately can step into that, or?
Well, it would still need to go through the public process,
Of course.
right? So, and I think some of the conversations that we've previously had was, I know the skate community is looking for a contractor and a specialized designer who has done skate parks before. So when we do go out, once funding is raised to go through that purchasing process, we'll make sure the scope of work does highlight that specialty.
That's all I have for now.
Thanks, Sam.
Sure.
And is Public Works looking to refill the position that Peter was serving in?
Correct.
Open rec.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you. Other commissioners? Shani?
Not an update, just repeating that. I'd love to hear an update about what's happening with sea level rise, including the shoreline, the levees, the horizontal levee. Today, there was a meeting of the water district. They have been looking to divert funding for sea level rise that we all voted for I don't remember the ballot measure, but anyway, they were looking to divert that fund from the Palo Alto and Mountain View area to the Alviso area, and they're gonna have, they voted to have an ad hoc of some kind with city representatives to see the next step on their efforts of moving the funds. So in the original plan, there was funding for 400 acres of restoration in Palo Alto and Mountain View. That seems to potentially be gone now. I don't know. So I hope that you'll talk to the city ad hoc, the city council members that are working on it, and trying to figure out what is happening, because it will impact our parks and it will impact sea level rise and potential restoration. If we could restore the ITT property, that would be fabulous. So try to save some of that money and see if we can have our city try to save some of it. Thank you.
I think it'd be good to add to the list of potential future agenda items to getting an update on the sea level rise and horizontal levee projects.
We can reach out to the other departments and see what we could do.
Yeah. I mean, they have presented to the Parks and Recs periodically, but it's been a while.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Just some quick updates. The Nature Preserve Access Policy ad hoc has been meeting, and we had a site tour last week at Pearson Rastero Preserve, and we'll be looking to report back to the full commission next month. And so we'll present our findings and recommendations at that time. The Baylands Comprehensive Conservation Plan, BCCP ad hoc has been meeting periodically as well and working on a long project, but looking to come back sometime soon and report back as well to the commission. There are 4 potential agenda items for next month that passed on by staff, including the Eleanor Pardee Park survey results and next steps. And that's listed as an action. So this would be an action recommendation to City Council to potentially recommend a dog park at Eleanor Pardee Park. Is that the purpose? The bathrooms. Yeah, the other one. Thank you. And also other agenda items include the BPTP bicycle and pedestrian transportation plan update, which had been targeted for this month, but got pushed out. And discussion items on Rastadero Creek restoration project and the Nature Preserve Access Policy update, which I just mentioned. Also, we're looking to schedule our annual retreat. And so staff will be sending out a doodle poll soon on that.
That was sent today.
Sent today. Okay, I've been busy today. Haven't caught up on my emails. Great, thank you. And looking to get confirmation on where we're going with our work plan, when the work plan needs to be updated. We're kind of in an interim period right now as our terms got extended and looking to get everything back on track. But
Isn't it going back? It's going to the council soon. Our work plan again.
Our work plan again.
I think, because we had to add the middle school athletics part in it. I may be, it'll all become clear.
We'll check on that.
Yep. Thank you. Anything else anyone wants to add? Thanks for hanging in there. We'll call this meeting to a close.